It was the kind of night when the sky seemed to rip itself apart. Lightning split the horizon. Thunder rolled low, shaking the ground beneath. And in the middle of that storm, a single father named Ethan Cole found his life torn wide open. A plane was falling out of the heavens, straight toward his cornfield, straight into the fragile world he had been struggling to hold together. This was no ordinary crash. This was the night that would bring a billionaire CEO into his life. The night when fire, rain, and fate collided. The night everything changed. Follow this story all the way through and tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I want to see just how far Ethan's story travels. The storm had begun just after dusk, rolling in with a thick wall of clouds that swallowed the stars whole. By 10 o'clock, the rain was falling in sheets, hammering against Ethan's old pickup as he made his way down the rural highway. The wipers scraped furiously across the glass, but still the road ahead blurred into streaks of water and flashes of light. He should have gone straight home after his shift at the diner. Rosa, the owner, had told him to leave early. But Ethan never liked to admit defeat to exhaustion. Another hour meant another few dollars, and a few dollars meant Maya could have what she needed. Shoes, school supplies, maybe even the asthma inhaler refill without waiting for a paycheck. Now with the storm raging, he wished he had listened. The radio fizzed static before giving up entirely. The truck rattled each time the wind shoved at its sides. He leaned forward, squinting jaw tight. That's when he saw it. A streak of light across the sky, low, too low. At first he thought it was lightning. But lightning didn't move like that. Lightning didn't sputter or weave drunkenly or carry the unmistakable sound of an engine choking on its last breath. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. "Oh God," he muttered, slamming the truck into park on the shoulder. His eyes tracked the small aircraft as it wobbled against the storm wings, tilting violently. He knew enough from his army days to recognize what came next. This wasn't a bird fighting turbulence. This was a machine failing in midair. He grabbed his phone with one hand, dialing 911. "There's a plane going down." His voice was steady, practice calm layered over panic. Single engine. Over County Road 17 by the Miller property line. The dispatcher's voice faded into the background, because in that same moment, Ethan heard the silence that came before disaster, the sudden choking cut of an engine dying completely, and then the spiral. The plane dropped fast, vanishing behind a row of trees. A flash. A muffled roar. The ground shook as if something enormous had slammed into the earth. Ethan didn't think. He just moved. He jammed the truck into gear wheels, spitting mud as he tore down the narrow farm road leading toward his fields. The storm screamed all around rain, soaking through his jacket within seconds. He left the truck half spun on the path and ran. Corn stalks slapped against his legs as he pushed through the rows. Ahead, a faint orange glow pulsed through the curtain of rain. The acrid stench of burning fuel hit his nose. The wreckage came into view, a small aircraft nose buried in the mud wing, sheared clean off. Flames licked at the fuselage, stubborn against the downpour. Years of training cut through the haze of fear. Ethan scanned quickly, fuel leaking, fire climbing, seconds before a full explosion. Someone was inside. He saw movement through the fractured cockpit glass. A head slumped forward, a figure strapped into the pilot's seat. "Hang on," he shouted, his voice swallowed by thunder. He clawed at the jammed door. Metal screamed as he yanked, slicing his palm on jagged edges. Blood mixed with rain dripping down his wrist. "Come on," he growled, bracing both boots into the mud. He pulled again. This time the hinge gave a desperate groan and the door cracked open enough for him to slip through. The pilot was a woman. Dark hair clung wet to her forehead, a gash spilling blood down her temple. Her right arm bent at an angle that made his stomach twist. "Ma'am, I'm getting you out," Ethan said firmly, even if she couldn't hear. Her eyelids fluttered. For a second, eyes met his dazed, dark commanding, even in weakness. "Tablet," she whispered. Then her head dropped again. Ethan didn't have time to wonder. He unclipped her harness, slid his arms under her, and lifted. She was lighter than he expected, but limp, her body folding against his chest. The fire crackled louder, spreading. Ethan staggered back through the rain, carrying her. He'd barely made it 50 yards when the fuel tank blew. The blast knocked him flat into the mud body, curled protectively around the stranger. Metal shrapnel rained down, sizzling in the wet ground around them. The fireball lit the storm in orange and red shadows stretching like claws across the field. He lay there panting, holding her tight until the roar faded. Alive. She was still breathing. Ethan forced himself up. Muscles screaming, boots sinking in mud, he carried her toward the faint lights of his farmhouse. Every step felt endless. The storm lashed at him. His arms burned. But he kept his eyes forward toward that warm yellow glow in the distance. His daughter's voice would be the first thing this stranger heard when she woke. And in that moment, Ethan knew whoever she was, her life was now tied to his. The alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m. sharp. Ethan Cole reached over in the dark, silencing it before the sound could filter through the thin wall into his daughter's room. For a moment, he lay still on his back, staring at the water stain spreading like a brown halo across the ceiling. The house smelled faintly of rain seeping through somewhere in the roof, damp wood, mixing with the scent of coffee grounds he'd left in the filter the night before. Another leak to fix. Another job he couldn't afford to put off, but couldn't afford to pay for either. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed boots, waiting by habit where they always were. His body complained, knees stiff back aching from the double shift at the diner. 42 wasn't supposed to feel ancient, but some mornings it did. He rubbed his face with calloused hands, then reached for his wallet on the nightstand. Inside, tucked behind his driver's license and the 11 crumpled dollars that had to stretch the rest of the week, sat a faded photograph. Sarah, his late wife, her smile frozen in time, hair blowing in some long-ago summer wind. He pressed his thumb along the curve of her cheek, a ritual so ingrained it felt like prayer. Morning Sar, he whispered into the empty room. Another day. The house creaked as he moved down the hallway. He could walk it blindfolded, every squeak of the floorboards memorized. In the kitchen, he assembled Maya's lunch, a peanut butter sandwich, half an apple, the last granola bar from the box. He scribbled a note on a napkin in his crooked handwriting. Have a great day, kiddo. Science project's looking amazing. Love, Dad. He folded it into her lunch bag. These notes were his way of being there when work kept him away. The coffee maker hissed to life, filling the silence with its familiar gurgle. Ethan sipped from his chipped mug and let the warmth chase away the chill from his bones. He glanced at the stack of unopened mail on the counter, the envelope from the bank sitting on top like an accusation. 3 months behind on the mortgage. He pushed it aside. Not now. Not before sunrise. By 5:15, the old pickup roared reluctantly to life. Over 200,000 miles on the engine. Transmission failing. He muttered to it like an old friend. Come on, buddy, one more day. The truck coughed, but held steady as he pulled onto the dark road toward Peterson's auto shop. Inside the garage, the smell of oil and rubber greeted him like a second home. Earl Peterson, gray hair tucked under a greasy cap, nodded as Ethan punched the time card. Henderson's minivan, Earl called. Pads and rotors. She's squealing bad. Ethan grunted in acknowledgement, already tugging on his coveralls. For the next 6 hours, he disappeared into the rhythm of work, grease on his fingers, metal and tools. The satisfying logic of machines. Cars made sense. You found the problem. You fixed it. You moved on. Unlike the bills, unlike the empty seat at the dinner table, unlike the look in Maya's eyes when he missed another school play. By noon, he washed his hands in the garage sink, the black grease never fully leaving the cracks in his skin. He changed shirts, swapped coveralls for a clean one, and drove across town to job number 2. The Silver Spoon Diner sat on Main and Elm, its neon sign buzzing faintly, even in daylight. Ethan parked out back, nodding to Manny, the dishwasher sneaking a smoke by the dumpster. Table 6 is waiting on you, Rosa called as he walked through the kitchen doors. The Hicks want your advice on college applications again. Ethan managed a tired smile. The Hicks were good people. Thought his army background gave him wisdom to share. He didn't have the heart to tell them he barely held his own life together. For 4 hours he poured coffee, carried plates, nodded through conversations. By 3 he ducked into the kitchen for a quick call to Mrs. Alvarez, the neighbor watching Maya. She's fine, Ethan, the elderly woman assured him. Homework at the kitchen table. I made her a snack. Thanks, Mrs. A. I'll be there by 6:30. She's like my granddaughter, the woman said warmly. The words stung more than comforted. Because Maya did deserve more. Deserved her mother. Deserved better than a father stretched thin across 2 jobs and too many bills. By 6, Ethan was back at Peterson's garage for another few hours. By 6:45, exhaustion sat in his bones like concrete as he parked in front of the farmhouse. The white paint peeled. Porch steps sagged. But it was the only thing left of value after Sarah's illness. His grandfather's legacy clung to with both hands. Dad Maya's voice lifted his spirits the second he opened the door. She sat at the table science project spread out before her, a model of an aircraft wing papers filled with careful handwriting. "Hey, kiddo." He dropped his keys on the counter. "Mrs. Alvarez helped me with calculations," Maya said proudly. "Did you know wing curvature changes air pressure and that's what makes planes fly?" Ethan smiled, leaning down to study the project. "Your mom would have been impressed. She always said you'd be the scientist in the family." The smile on Maya's face flickered at the mention of Sarah, but she nodded. "I think she'd like it." Dinner was cobbled together from scraps in the fridge, milk nearly gone, vegetables limp. Another trip to the store meant another stretch of dollars he didn't have. Still, he listened to Maya chatter about her teachers, her friends. He asked questions, nodded at all the right places, even while his mind calculated if the electric bill could wait another week. After dinner came homework, then bedtime. The ritual was sacred, tucking her in, smoothing the blanket, listening to her voice soften in the half-dark. "Dad." "Yeah. Are we going to be okay?" The question caught him. He sat there in silence for too long. "Of course we are, kiddo. Why do you ask?" She hesitated. "I heard Mrs. Alvarez talking on the phone. She said something about the bank, about you working too hard." Ethan swallowed, forced a smile. "Mrs. Alvarez worries too much. We're fine, Maya. I promise." The lie sat heavy, bitter, but he held the smile until her eyes closed. Out in the hallway, he leaned against the wall, shoulders bowed. On the counter, the letter from the bank waited. He picked it up, read the words again. 3 months behind. Foreclosure looming. No change since the morning. Just black ink sealing his fate. He dropped it back down and sat on the edge of his bed, too tired to untie his boots. He glanced at the family photo on the nightstand, Sarah beside him. Maya, at 6 years old between them all, smiles under a Ferris wheel. "I'm trying, Sar," he whispered. "I'm really trying." Outside, thunder rolled again. A weather alert chimed on his phone, severe storms overnight. His last thought before sleep was that he needed to check the roof for leaks tomorrow. Another problem. Another day. Unaware that before dawn the sky itself would fall into his world. The storm arrived sooner than anyone expected. By the time the clock crept past 8 that Friday night, rain was already lashing against the windows of the Silver Spoon Diner. Thunder rattled the glasses stacked behind the counter. Lightning strobed white across Main Street, empty, except for a few cars rushing home before the worst of it hit. Ethan stood behind the counter, wiping down the same surface for the 3rd time in an hour. The diner was nearly deserted. Rosa, the owner, leaned against the doorway to the kitchen, arms folded. "This is ridiculous," she said, watching the sheets of water blur the world outside. "Go home, Ethan. We've had 2 customers in the last hour." He looked up, cloth still in his hand. "I can stay." "You don't have to pay me for the slow night. I'm paying you regardless." Rosa shot back, her tone softening even as she insisted. "Your daughter needs you more than I do. Roads are getting worse by the minute. Go now while you still can." Ethan hesitated. Pride always made him fight for every dollar, but Rosa was right. He nodded, tucking the cloth under the counter. "Thanks, Rosa." She waved him off. "Get going before I change my mind." By the time Ethan stepped outside, the storm had grown teeth. Rain fell in sheets so heavy it turned the world into a gray curtain. His old pickup protested as he coaxed it into gear, the wipers slapping frantically across the windshield, never quite catching up. As he turned down the back road toward home, lightning tore open the sky, illuminating the cornfields in brief flashes. That's when he saw it. Something moving above the tree line. At first he thought it was just the storm playing tricks, but then the shape became clear, a small aircraft fighting desperately against the wind, its engine sputtering. "What the hell?" Ethan muttered, leaning forward against the wheel. Another flash of lightning froze the image in his mind, a single-engine plane tilting too steep, nose-dipping erratically. Even from the ground, he could see the struggle, the uneven banking, the way the wings fought the storm like a wounded bird. His chest tightened. He'd seen that look before. Not in planes, but in vehicles back in the Army. Machines seconds away from catastrophic failure. The pickup fishtailed slightly as he slowed hazard lights blinking through the downpour. He grabbed his phone, dialing with wet fingers. 911. What's your emergency? There's a plane going down. His voice was sharp, urgent, steady in a way that came only from training. Single engine. Looks like it's losing altitude fast. County Road 17 near the Miller property. Sir, can you confirm? But Ethan didn't hear the rest, because in that exact moment, the engine above him coughed one last time and fell silent. The plane dipped violently, vanishing behind the tree line. Then came the sound, a terrible, sickening crunch followed by a muted explosion that rattled his bones. A fireball lit the horizon, swallowed quickly by the rain, but bright enough to burn itself into his vision. God, no, he breathed. He dropped the phone into the seat beside him and floored the gas tires, spinning mud as the truck lurched onto the access road that cut through his fields. Branches clawed at the sides of the truck as he swerved into the corn rows, headlights bouncing wildly. The glow of fire guided him, faint and flickering through the rain. He braked hard, the truck skidding to a halt in the mud. And then he ran. Rain soaked him instantly, plastering his shirt to his skin boots, sinking into the flooded earth. The smell hit him first, aviation fuel, sharp in the air, smoke curling up through the storm. The wreckage lay ahead. The small plane had broken apart, its wings twisted and torn. Flames clawed at the fuselage, hungry despite the rain. He forced himself closer, every instinct screaming danger. The fuel was still leaking, the fire creeping toward it. He had seconds, maybe less. Through the fractured cockpit glass he saw her, a woman. Head slumped forward, dark hair matted with blood, her arm bent wrong against the restraints. She stirred weakly, a moan slipping past her lips. "Hang on!" Ethan shouted, gripping the cockpit door. The metal was warped, jagged edges cutting deep into his palm as he yanked. He grunted, bracing his boots against the mud, pulling with every ounce of strength left in his body. The door gave a screech, shifting just enough for him to wedge it open. Inside, the woman's breathing was shallow but steady. Her face, striking even through streaks of blood and soot, was pale against the glow of firelight. "Ma'am," Ethan said, forcing his voice calm. "We've got to move. Now!" Her eyelids fluttered. For a split second, her gaze locked with his eyes, dark, commanding, but clouded by pain. "Tablet," she whispered, barely audible through the storm. "Need my tablet." Ethan glanced around the cabin, but saw nothing except flames and twisted metal. There was no time. "I'll come back if I can. Right now, I'm getting you out." He unclipped her harness, sliding his arms carefully beneath her. She was light, far too light for someone who carried such presence even in weakness. Her broken arm pressed awkwardly against him as he lifted. The fire hissed louder, crawling toward the leaking fuel. Ethan staggered back, mud sucking at his boots as he carried her away from the wreckage. His muscles screamed with effort, lungs burning from smoke and rain. 50 yards. That's as far as he got. Then the plane exploded. The blast roared across the field, a wall of fire and heat that slammed into him like a hammer. He hit the ground hard. Instinct curling his body around hers, shielding her from debris that rained down around them. Shards of metal hissed into the mud. The shock wave rattled his teeth. For a moment, the world was nothing but orange and black rain and fire colliding. When the sound finally ebbed, he lifted his head. She was still breathing, her face slack but alive. Alive. His arms shook as he pushed himself up, hoisting her again. He turned toward the distant glow of his farmhouse windows, warmth safety shelter. Every step through the sucking mud was agony. Rain blurred his vision, cold seeping into his bones, but he never loosened his grip. Somewhere behind him, the fire still burned. Ahead, his home beckoned like a beacon. And in his arms, unconscious but alive, lay the woman who would soon turn his entire world upside down. The front door flew open on its swollen hinges. Warm light spilled onto the porch. Rain hammered the steps like 1,000 drumming fists. "Maya, open it wider." Ethan gasped, breath-burning arms locked around the unconscious woman. His 12-year-old daughter sprang back, eyes wide, hair damp from the humidity that had crept in with the storm. Dad? What happened? Who plane? In the field. He moved sideways through the doorway, careful with the weight in his arms. Call 911. Now. Mrs. Alvarez appeared from the kitchen, one hand already at her chest, the other gripping a dish towel. Madre de Dios, she whispered, crossing herself as she hurried ahead, dragging the coffee table aside to make room on the sofa. Put her here. Gently. Gently, Ethan? He lowered the woman onto the couch. Her flight jacket was soaked, the sleeve torn where the arm bent wrong. Blood had matted along her hairline, made darker by the rain. Even unconscious, her presence filled the room. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, that watch on her left wrist. Expensive cracked, unmoving at some frozen 8:08. Maya already had the phone at her ear. There was a plane crash, she said, voice too steady for a child. In our field. County Road 17. It exploded. My dad carried someone out. Yes, she's breathing. Please hurry, please. Ethan leaned close to the woman's face. Shallow breaths, skin cool, pulse fast but present at her neck. Shock, broken arm, head wound. He turned to Mrs. Alvarez. Blankets, pillows, the first aid kit, towels. I have it, she said, bustling down the hall, every step determined. She moved the way people move when fear has purpose. Maya ended the call, throat bobbing. They said, the storm has... Everything's delayed. They're coming, but the roads are flooding. It might be a while. A while. In a storm like this, a while could mean an hour or two or more. It's okay, he told her, keeping his voice low and steady. We know what to do until they get here. He cut the woman's damp jacket sleeve with kitchen shears. The arm wasn't compound, thank God, but the swelling had started. He fashioned a splint from a rolled magazine and a flat wooden spoon wrapped tight with strips of an old dish towel. Mrs. Alvarez worked beside him in practiced silence, pressing clean cloth to the cut at the woman's temple, changing it when it flushed pink. The woman stirred, a small sound, her lashes fluttered, eyes opening to the dim lamp glow. For a moment, sharp intelligence swam through the fog in her gaze. Where... You're safe, Ethan said. My home. I'm Ethan. You crashed. I got you out. The tablet. The word came out like a ghost of breath. Did you get... He shook his head once. No time. The plane blew. Her eyes closed again, pain and calculation flickering across her face before exhaustion pulled her under. She looked younger in sleep, and somehow lonelier. Thunder rolled so close the windows rattled. The lights flickered. Ethan felt the house take a breath. Hold it, then steady. Maya hovered near the end of the sofa, arms wrapped around herself. Is she going to die? No. His answer was immediate. Firm. Not here. Not in this house. He lifted the woman's feet onto a pillow, elevated them to fight the shock. Emergency blanket from his army duffel, thin silver, crinkling like foil over her legs and torso. He checked her pupils with the small flashlight he kept in the junk drawer, one bigger than the other. Concussion for sure. Water, Mrs. Alvarez said, setting a glass on the side table for him. And I will pray. Do it, he said softly. Do everything you know. The storm drummed its relentless song. The old farmhouse breathed with its settling creaking the way old bones do when the weather changes. This room had held birthdays, grief, laughter that pushed back the walls. Now it held something else, the fragile weight of a stranger's life. Maya edged closer, small hand finding his sleeve. Dad. He looked at her, saw the sheen of fear in her eyes, saw Sarah there too, the same way she'd look at him years ago when a fever spiked and an old thermostat clicked wrong in the winter. He felt the room tilt with a memory cheap antiseptic in a hospital hall, him counting the seconds between beeps at a monitor, the absurd, helpless math of watching the person you love fight something you couldn't fix with a wrench. He squeezed Maya's hand. I've got her, he said. I've got you. Mrs. Alvarez perched in the armchair, rosary in hand, lips moving silently. The clock on the wall ticked like a patient heart. Rain pooled under the door before he stuffed a towel there. He turned the thermostat up a notch. Warm air hummed through old vents. Minutes stretched. Then an hour, maybe more. Time became breath sets and small adjustments change the compression on the bandage. Look for signs of worsening shock. Speak softly so the body might decide the world is safe enough to stay. At some point, Maya brought him the worn leather wallet from the nightstand and set it next to his coffee mug. A photograph peeked from behind the frayed leather, Sarah laughing into sun. He didn't open it, just rested his fingers there for a second as if the photo might warm his skin. Should we call again? Maya asked. In a minute. He lifted the woman's hand, cool, delicate bones callous at the base of the thumb, like someone who gripped things that mattered, and checked her watch again, cracked crystal catching the lamplight. The brand name on the dial was one he'd only seen in magazines at the dentist's office. Who do you think she is? Maya whispered. Someone who needs help. He adjusted the emergency blanket. Someone's daughter. A gust slammed against the porch. The wind moaned under the eaves. The lights flickered again. Held. Ethan listened to the furnace and felt grateful for every tired part that still worked. The woman murmured something else, a tangle of syllables half-formed. He leaned in. Audrey, she breathed. Adrian Maya guessed. Don't push her, Mrs. Alvarez murmured. Let the body speak when it is ready. Ethan sat back, flexing his hand. The cut across his palm had crusted with blood and rainwater. It stung now that the adrenaline had cooled. He wrapped it with gauze one-handed, thinking of all the small wounds a day carried, paper cuts, cracked knuckles, 2 sharp words you wish you could take back, and how the body learns to keep moving anyway. Midnight bled into the slow hours where the storm softened from fury to ache. The rhythm changed. Less rage. More rain. Wind dropping from a scream to a sigh. Maya fell asleep under a blanket on the floor beside the sofa, her hand near the woman's boot like she'd set herself on watch too. Mrs. Alvarez dozed in the chair, rosary still looped in her fingers. Ethan stayed awake. He watched the woman's breathing. He counted. He adjusted the pillow. He stared at nothing and at everything, and at the line of damp footprints he'd tracked across the floor that he would mop later when no one needed him to be a mountain. Outside, a long, low rumble announced the storm's retreat toward the hills. The rain eased to a steady patter. The first thin suggestion of dawn began to gather in the east, barely there, like the idea of light. Ethan rubbed his eyes. He let himself drift for a second, chin dropping to chest, the short, heavy collapse of a man whose body has simply run out of night. He woke to a small sound. Where am I? The voice was hoarse, threaded with authority even then. He blinked, focused. The woman's eyes were open, clearer now. Assessing. My home, he said, leaning forward, gentling his tone. You went down in the storm, in my field. She lifted her left hand, careful, slow, touching the bandage at her temple. The motion cost her. Pain etched her mouth. She saw the splint and nodded once, approval flashing through the discomfort. Your name, he asked, if you can. A beat. The muscles in her throat worked. Adriana, she said. Then with a breath, Vega. The name rang a bell in his head. Not from his world exactly, from magazine covers at the diner, from a TV turned low in a waiting room. Adriana Vega. Horizon. Something. The tech company with the bright, clean logo you saw on billboards when you drove into the city. Innovations for people who'd been left out. Billions. A face that never smiled too wide. He didn't show the recognition, just nodded the way you nod when someone says the truth out loud. I'm Ethan Cole, he said. This is my daughter Maya. He glanced at the sleeping bundle of blanket beside the sofa. And our neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez. You crashed about a quarter-mile out. I brought you in. We stabilized you. The ambulance got delayed in the storm. Adriana's gaze drifted across the room, taking in the knit throw on the arm of the couch. The science project spread across the dining table, blueprints and cardstock, and a hand-lettered sign that read lift and drag, and the family photo on the mantel, 3 smiles under a Ferris wheel. Her eyes softened for a heartbeat when they landed on the photo. Then they sharpened again. My phone, she said. Did you find it? He shook his head. You had your watch, jacket, no phone. She swallowed, thinking. I keep a backup. Her left hand patted the inside of the jacket where he had folded it across the coffee table. He handed it to her. From an inner pocket, she pulled a sleek, reinforced case, scuffed but intact. She held it like a talisman. Thank you, she said. He shrugged a small motion. He wanted to say, anyone would have done it, but he had been out there and seen how the night eats courage. He said nothing. She unlocked the phone with a quick glance, fingers moving across the screen with economical precision. Storm's easing, signals back. She looked up. May I use your... Kitchen phone's on the wall, he said. But you've got service now. She nodded. This will do. He watched her call with a voice that was calm and clipped and very awake. Noah, it's me, she said when the line connected. I'm alive. I'm at a private residence, crash site secured by weather. Send the medical team in a security detail. Discretion, please? Pause. Her eyes flicked to him. County Road 17, the Cole farmhouse. Yes, low profile. We have a concussion and a closed forearm fracture. I'm stable. A longer pause. She listened. Her expression did not change, but something in her posture softened, as if the person on the other end had said the exact right words. Yes, she said quietly. Tell Diana to coordinate with local response. Keep the press away. Another pause. And Noah, before we discuss anything else, you'll ensure Mr. Cole and his family are properly thanked. She ended the call and exhaled. Only then did she wince. The effort had cost her reserves. Can I get you water? Ethan asked. Yes, she said. Then more softly, please. He helped her sit with a careful arrangement of pillows. She drank like someone who refuses to be seen as needy even when she is. He recognized the kind of pride that holds a person together when pain would pull them apart. Thank you, she said again, setting the glass down. For the rescue. For this. Her gaze touched the blanket silver and crinkled across her legs. You did everything right. He shrugged again, but his throat tightened. Praise could slip into the cracks a man kept sealed. He focused on the practical. It'll be a bit before they get here. The road from town is ugly. You should rest. I'll try, she said, eyes already lowering. If I sleep, wake me every hour. I know, he said. Concussion. He stood. In the soft light of early morning, the room looked gentler, like the house itself had forgiven them for bringing the storm inside. Maya stirred, pushing hair from her face. She blinked at Adriana, then at her father. Is she awake? Adriana said, a faint smile, and grateful. Maya sat up, breath catching. Hi, I'm Maya. I like your watch. Adriana glanced at the cracked crystal, let out a small huff that might have been a laugh if the situation were not what it was. I liked it better yesterday. Outside, a sound grew distant at first, then distinct. The thrum of helicopter blades. Not military. Not news. Corporate. A different kind of thunder rolling over the hill. Ethan went to the window. A procession of black SUVs turned onto the long dirt drive tires, throwing rooster tails of muddy water. The helicopter circled once, then hovered over the far edge of the field, searching for a safe approach. Mrs. Alvarez stood straightening her cardigan. Dios mío. Maya pressed against the glass beside her father. Dad, there are so many. The convoy eased to a stop along the fence line. Men and women in dark jackets stepped out with deliberate speed radios at their shoulders, earpieces glinting. Two carried hard-sided medical cases. One woman, mid-40s, hair, tight posture that read, Soldier even out of uniform, scanned the yard, then the porch, then the windows. Her gaze found Ethan's, held, gave a short professional nod. A knock measured, not frantic, sounded at the door. Ethan opened it to the storm-dampened air and a man in an immaculate raincoat, tablet in hand. Not frantic either. Assessing. Mr. Cole, he asked. I'm Noah Park, Chief of Staff for Miss Vega. May we enter? Ethan stepped back, letting the small tide of competence wash into his living room. The house shifted again as if bracing. Medics moved to the sofa. The soldier woman Diana swept the hallway with a glance, clocked the exits, the family photographs, the science project on the table, the towel stuffed under the door. She gave orders with 2 fingers, barely any sound. Equipment opened like flowers. Vitals. Pupil response. Splint confirmed. A saline line prepared and paused at Adriana's nod. Maya hovered until Diana knelt to her level. You did very well, Diana said. Thank you for helping your dad. She meant it. Maya straightened like a flag. Ethan stood 3 feet from the couch and felt for a moment oddly outside his own house. The space where he'd carried birthdays and grief now held people who came from a world where problems were solved with teams and plans and rapid deployment. He felt protective of the house of the girl beside him, even of the woman on his couch, and also relieved that someone else was carrying the next 10 minutes. Adriana watched it all with the stillness of a general in bed. Noah leaned in. They spoke in low tones that didn't try to pretend Ethan wasn't in the room. She looked over at him. "Mr. Cole," she said, voice stronger now. "Noah will coordinate with the local authorities about the crash site. My team will ensure your property is respected." She paused. Something gentler moved behind her eyes, and the rotor beat deepened outside. A shadow crossed the ceiling as the helicopter shifted position. The room hushed just for a breath, all attention drawn upward. Adriana's gaze returned to Ethan. She took in the cut on his hand, the mud on his jeans, the towel at the door, the napkin note peeking from Maya's lunch bag on the counter. Her mouth softened. "And before we go anywhere," she said quietly, "we'll talk." The soldier woman lifted her chin. "Miss Vega, as soon as you're ready, we can transport—" "Wait," Adriana said, not looking away from Ethan. "There's a decision to make." The house held its breath again, as if it too were waiting to hear what came next. The farmhouse had never seen anything like it. Suits in the living room, radios buzzing low, medical kits spread across the old wooden floor. And in the middle of it all, on Ethan's sagging sofa, Adriana Vega sat propped against pillows, her splinted arm cradled against her chest, her eyes sharp despite the pallor on her face. Noah bent near her tablet, balanced on one palm, stylus tapping. The board is already demanding updates. Press inquiries are flooding in. Investors want to know if tomorrow's meetings are still on the table. Adriana raised her hand, silencing him with a small gesture. "Noah, I nearly died last night." Her voice wasn't loud, but it was iron. "If Mr. Cole hadn't risked his life to drag me out of that wreckage, you'd be drafting an obituary, not a statement. So before we discuss schedules and investors, you will ensure this man is properly thanked." The room went still. Noah blinked startled, then looked at Ethan with sudden deference. "Of course, Mr. Cole. Horizon Technologies owes you an unpayable debt. Anything you need, anything at all, is at your disposal." Ethan shifted uncomfortable beneath the weight of so many eyes. He shook his head. "I didn't do it for anything. She needed help. That's all." Adriana smiled faintly, as though she knew exactly how thin that modesty ran. "Not everyone would have done what you did." Maya, still barefoot in her pajamas, stepped closer, clutching her notebook against her chest. She had been silent since the convoy arrived, her eyes wide as if her home had been invaded by characters from a different story. Finally, she whispered, "Dad always helps people." The remark drew soft laughter from Mrs. Alvarez, who hovered in the doorway, wringing her hands. "That's true, Nina. Your father's heart is bigger than his wallet." Noah cleared his throat. "Miss Vega, the ambulance is staged half a mile down, waiting for word. If you're ready, we can—" "No," Adriana interrupted. She looked around the modest room, the peeling wallpaper, the science project spread across the dining table, the photo frames lined unevenly on the mantel. Then her gaze returned to Ethan. "If Mr. Cole permits, I would rather remain here, at least for tonight." The medics exchanged glances. Diana, the stoic head of security, spoke for them. "Miss Vega, the nearest suitable accommodations are over an hour away. Roads are still unstable. Remaining here is a secure option. My team can establish perimeter and handle communications protocols." Ethan blinked. "Here." In this house, Adriana met his eyes evenly. "It's safer, quieter. And frankly, after last night, I'd rather stay where the person who saved my life is within reach." He hesitated. His farmhouse had never looked so small as it did now, crowded with corporate professionals. He wanted to protest, say she'd be more comfortable at a hotel, say this wasn't the place for someone like her. But when he opened his mouth, what came out was different. "You're welcome to stay," he said, surprising even himself. Then it settled. Adriana leaned back against the pillows, closing her eyes briefly, as if the decision itself cost her energy. "Noah, send most of the team back. Keep it quiet. Diana, 2 on rotation. Nothing conspicuous." "Yes, ma'am." Within an hour, the chaos thinned. Most of the entourage departed, engines roaring back down the soaked dirt road. What remained was a skeleton crew, Diana, a second security officer named Carter, and a medical assistant who hovered with quiet efficiency. The farmhouse exhaled, returning to something like itself. Mrs. Alvarez immediately bustled toward the kitchen. If she is to stay, she will eat real food, not these protein bars and powders. Tonight, we make dinner worthy of a guest. Adriana protested lightly, but Mrs. Alvarez silenced her with a wave. You nearly burned alive, mija. You will eat. Ethan caught Adriana's expression, then bemused, softened, almost grateful for the bossy warmth. He busied himself at the sink, rinsing the mud from his arms, the cut on his palm stinging as water ran through it. He wrapped it in fresh gauze, more self-conscious now under the scrutiny of strangers who had the look of people used to surgical precision. Dad, Maya whispered at his elbow. She's really Adriana Vega, isn't she? From the magazines, from the science articles. He nodded once, keeping his voice low. Yeah, kiddo, looks like it. Her eyes were huge. She talked to me about my project. She knew about wing designs, like really knew. And she listened, like she cared. Ethan glanced over his shoulder. Adriana was watching them, her gaze not the cold distance of a CEO, but something gentler. When their eyes met, she didn't look away. Dinner was a strange, almost surreal affair. Mrs. Alvarez served steaming paella, insisting that everyone, including the stone-faced Diana, sit at the table. Maya sat across from Adriana, animated as she explained her model airplane wing. Adriana asked questions, offered suggestions, even sketched a small diagram on a napkin. Ethan, at the stove plating seconds, found himself pausing just to watch, to see his daughter glowing with pride as this powerful woman treated her ideas with seriousness, to see Adriana, billionaire, innovator, survivor, laugh softly at one of Maya's jokes, her face lit not by corporate polish, but by genuine warmth. Later, after Maya had been shooed to bed, Ethan stepped onto the porch. The rain had finally thinned to a mist, stars fighting to reclaim the sky. He leaned on the railing, listening to the damp earth breathe. The door creaked open. Adriana stood there, wrapped in one of Mrs. Alvarez's knitted shawls, her sling cradling her arm. You should be resting, he said. She joined him at the railing anyway, her eyes tracing the dark field where the wreck still smoldered faintly. I've been in boardrooms filled with men who pretend to listen, she said quietly. But your daughter, she deserves more than pretense. She deserves opportunity. He glanced at her. She deserves more than I can give. Adriana turned her head, then studied his profile under the porch light. Maybe. Or maybe you underestimate what you already give. The silence between them was charged heavy with unspoken things. The night air smelled of wet corn and smoke. Somewhere, an owl called. Ethan exhaled long and tired. I don't know what world you come from, Miss Vega, but this one, it doesn't stretch very far. Her eyes softened. Call me Adriana. He hesitated, then nodded once. Adriana. Inside the house was quiet except for the steady tick of the clock and the low hum of security radios. Outside, the stars pressed down patient witnesses. Neither of them said it aloud, but they both knew as the night leaned into silence that what had begun in fire and storm was far from finished. Morning seeped in slow, pale streaks. The storm clouds had broken, leaving the world damp, gleaming, fragile. Ethan woke to the sound of quiet movement, the kind that didn't belong in his house. He blinked against the weak sunlight filtering through his curtain, sat up and listened. Maya's laughter drifted down the hallway light and surprised. And beneath it, another voice, smooth, deliberate, accented slightly with something he couldn't place. Adriana. He pushed himself out of bed, muscles, stiff boots still by the door from the night before. His hand throbbed where the cut split again. He rewrapped it quickly, then followed the voices to the kitchen. The scene froze him on the threshold. Adriana sat at the dining table, her injured arm still in a sling, but posture straight. Maya sat beside her, explaining her project notebook with the kind of animated gestures she usually reserved only for Ethan. On the table lay Adriana's cracked watch, her reinforced phone, and astonishingly, a pad of clean paper where she'd begun to sketch diagrams for wing curvature. And if you adjust the angle here, Adriana was saying, her pencil tracing a curve, you'll reduce drag. Stability is always a compromise. Flight is about persuasion. You're convincing the sky to let you stay a little longer. Maya's mouth dropped open. That's exactly how Dad explains engines. Like they talk back. Adriana smiled the kind of smile that wasn't polished or guarded. A real one. Ethan cleared his throat softly. Morning. Both turned toward him. Maya beamed. Adriana simply nodded, poised, but her eyes carried a softness that hadn't been there the night before. You didn't have to. Ethan gestured at the sketches. She insisted I look, Adriana said. And she's good. Better than good. Maya grinned so wide Ethan thought her face might split. She said I could be an engineer. Ethan's chest ached. Pride. Fear. Both in equal measure. He glanced at Adriana, but she had already picked up her phone thumb, moving over the screen in those clipped, efficient motions. Noah's voice carried faintly from the speaker. Ma'am, the team is ready for transport. SUVs are staged. The helicopter's prepped. Adriana's reply was brisk. We'll wait. Roads are still soft, and I'm not leaving until I've spoken with Mr. Cole. The call ended. Silence filled the kitchen. Ethan crossed to the counter, poured himself coffee, and leaned back against the sink. You don't owe me anything, he said finally. Her gaze lifted. Steady. I disagree. She nodded toward Maya's project notebook. She has potential that shouldn't be limited by circumstance. And you, she paused, measuring her words. You carry more than your share. Last night proved that. He frowned uncomfortable. Look, I'm just a mechanic. A dad trying to keep the lights on. We're fine. Adriana's lips curved in a way that said she didn't believe him. Fine is not the same as thriving. The medical assistant appeared then, checking Adriana's vitals, asking her to follow a light with her eyes adjusting the sling. She tolerated it with quiet patience, though Ethan caught the flicker of irritation in her jaw. When the assistant left, Adriana set her coffee down and folded her good hand across the table. Mr. Cole, Ethan. I have resources. Influence, a company built on creating opportunity. Let me do something for you. He stiffened. I won't take charity. It wouldn't be charity, she said. Her voice was low, almost gentle. It would be repayment. You saved my life. That's worth more than any transmission or mortgage payment. His throat tightened. He remembered the letter on the counter, the third notice. 3 months behind. Maya's question at bedtime. Are we going to be okay? He wanted to say yes. He always said yes. But looking into Adriana's steady eyes, he felt the weight of the lie pressing harder. Before he could answer, Diana entered, her posture, sharp eyes scanning every corner as if she never stopped assessing threats. Ms. Vega, local media is circling the end of the road. We can't hold them off much longer. Adriana stood, or rather rose carefully, leaning on the back of the chair until her balance steadied. Then we'll leave. She turned to Ethan. But this conversation isn't finished. The convoy rolled up not long after, SUVs and gleaming black helicopters overhead, men and women with calm faces and invisible weapons. The farmhouse seemed to shrink under their presence. Neighbors peered from porches down the road trying to make sense of the intrusion. Maya clutched Ethan's sleeve, whispering, Dad, they look like the movies. He squeezed her hand. Stay close. Inside, Adriana gathered her few things, the cracked watch, the reinforced phone, the shawl Mrs. Alvarez had pressed around her shoulders. Before she left, she paused at the family photograph on the mantel. She studied Sarah's face, then glanced at Ethan. She looks like you, Adriana said softly. Around the eyes. He nodded once, words lodged behind his teeth. Then the medics guided her to the waiting SUV, the security team closing ranks. She moved with the authority of someone accustomed to command, even with her arm in a sling, even fresh from fire. Cameras flashed at the far end of the driveway, reporters shouting questions that the wind shredded before they reached the porch. Adriana settled into the SUV, Noah climbing in beside her. Just before the door shut, she leaned out. Ethan. He stepped closer. Her eyes held his. This isn't goodbye. Then the door closed, the convoy pulling away in a spray of mud. The helicopters lifted, the sound vibrating in his chest until it faded into the sky. And just like that, the farmhouse was quiet again. Too quiet. Maya leaned against him, whispering, Do you think she'll come back? He looked out across the cornfield, scarred now with blackened earth where fire had raged. I don't know, kiddo, he said, but something tells me we haven't seen the last of her. A month later, the sky over San Francisco looked like brushed steel and pearl. Clouds slid low over the bay. Gulls hung on the wind like scraps of paper. Ethan tightened his grip on Maya's backpack as they stepped off the jetway. He felt the old ache in his shoulders, part travel, part nerves, part the weight of everything unknown waiting beyond the terminal doors. Maya beside him vibrated with a soft, contained joy, the way a light bulb vibrates just before it fully glows. The sign near baggage claim read Cole in clean, sharp letters. The driver matched the sign: spotless suit, precise smile, a practiced bow. Mr. Cole. Ms. Maya, welcome to San Francisco. They slid into the town car's back seat, the leather cool smelling faintly of cedar. The city unspooled outside the window, new glass next to old brick hills stitched with painted houses, cable cars clanging like memory. Maya pressed her forehead to the glass and pointed at everything. Look at that building, and the one with the round windows. And Dad, are those the famous painted ladies? They look like candy houses. They kind of are, he said, trying to sound relaxed and failing because the car was gliding up Nob Hill toward a hotel he had seen on postcards. The Fairmont rose like a promise, polished brass, marble floors. A lobby that could have swallowed his entire farmhouse and still asked what else he had. At the front desk, the concierge smiled as if she already knew their names. Because she did. Mr. Cole, she said. Miss Vega has arranged everything. If you need anything at all, press 0 and say your name. We'll handle the rest. Anything, Maya whispered as they followed the bellman down a corridor that smelled like money and lemon polish. Don't test it, Ethan murmured. The suite had windows that made the city a painting water bridge fog, sliding like silk. 2 bedrooms. A living room with a bowl of green apples that looked too perfect to eat. A welcome basket sat on the dining table with a card tucked into the ribbon. For Maya thought you might need fuel for the brain. Inside were books on aerodynamics, a small model plane kit, and her favorite chocolate, the exact brand she'd mentioned offhand over paella. How did she... Maya's voice trailed away into awe. Ethan stood by the window and watched a gull ride a gust and corrected himself, not awe. Recognition. Adriana had listened, remembered. In a world that measured itself in billions, she had made a gesture that cost time. Attention. Those were the currencies Ethan understood. The next morning, a black sedan collected them for the tour of Horizon Technologies. The building was an exhale of glass and steel, the kind of tower that didn't look like it touched the ground so much as it decided to rest there for a while. The logo? Horizon cut across the entry like a line of light. Inside the lobby rose 3 stories open and white, a floating staircase like a ribbon plants reaching upward as if they could read the sign and obey. Mr. Cole, Maya. The receptionist's smile was the kind that never reached for too much. Welcome, Ms. Vega asked me to escort you to the executive floor. A private elevator whisked them upward. Maya grabbed the handrail and grinned at the way her stomach dipped. Ethan stared at the numbers ticking by, faster than felt reasonable. His reflection in the mirrored wall looked like a man wearing a life he had borrowed for the day, a suit that didn't quite belong to his shoulders, a tie that felt like a polite choke. He thought about oil under nails and the easy truth of an honest wrench. He breathed. The doors opened into a quieter world. Carpet swallowed footsteps, art on the walls in black frames. A glass conference room where people in slate suits looked at charts and nodded slowly like they were agreeing with a metronome. Good morning, said a woman with a clipped bob and a badge that read, Kendra, Guest Relations. We'll start in R&D. Research and development was another entire world. White, bright. The hum of machines that wanted to be heard but not seen. Engineers in fleeces and sneakers floated between workstations, coffee cups in hand, eyes fixed on screens where data flowed like rain. Kendra led them to a glassed-in lab where 3 people hovered over a device on a padded mat. It looked like a sleek minimalist crown, a curve of composite, a shimmer of sensors, thin cables trailing like hair. This is the neural interface, Kendra said. She didn't sound like a tour guide. She sounded proud. Codename Icarus. Maya pressed both hands to the glass. "It's beautiful," she whispered. An engineer looked up, saw them, and broke into a grin. He was mid-30s, curly hair ink on his forearms that peeked from under his lab coat like a secret map. His badge read Arman, Principal Engineer. "You must be Maya," he said as they stepped inside, the young woman whose wing designs had Adriana sketching on napkins. Maya blushed. Ethan glanced at her, resisting the urge to make a joke so he wouldn't have to feel the swell in his chest. "Pride can hurt if you're not used to it." Armin gestured to the device. "We're stabilizing the housing. The internals are solid sensors, read neural signals and microsaccades, and translate them into commands, but the shell has to be resilient and light. Every gram matters." Ethan looked without meaning to. He saw what anyone would see, a beautiful object. He also saw what he had been trained to see, failure points. Sharp bends where a cable would fret and break after 100 cycles. A vent pattern that would clog with dust in a week in a real home. A mounting screw too close to a seam that would crack under stress. He kept his mouth shut. This wasn't his world. Armin noticed the way Ethan's eyes tracked the crown. Engineers know the look of someone who is listening with their hands. "You can say it," Armin said, amused. "We thrive on critique." Ethan swallowed. "You have a strain relief problem on that connector," he said, finally nodding toward the cable interface. "Bend radius is too tight. It'll fail under daily use." Armin blinked. "Yes," he said slowly. "We thought the same. We were debating offsetting the mount, but it messed with the profile. Use a dog bone grommet and shift the stress into the elastomer," Ethan said, surprised at himself for speaking. "Exterior stays clean. Cable survives." One of the other engineers tiny sharp-eyed her badge, reading Priya, me, tilted her head. "And the vents?" "They'll block," he said. "Pet hair, dust, life. You want slats you can wipe, not honeycomb. People don't own compressed air. Give them a cloth and a chance." Priya grinned. "I like him." Maya's eyes shot to her father like he had just done magic with a wrench and a word. He felt heat rise in his neck and looked at the floor. Kendra's phone buzzed. She leaned in. "Ms. Vega is finishing a call. She'll meet you in the prototyping bay." They wove through corridors of glass. In one room, robots worked with slow, deliberate grace assembling and unassembling parts like monks making and erasing sand mandalas. In another, a wall displayed the evolution of Horizon's accessibility tools. Keyboards with soft press keys, eye-tracking modules, voice systems that learned how to hear even the quietest whisper of breath. Maya read every caption, whispered each one aloud like a spell. They reached prototyping. It smelled like resin and hot plastic and singed circuit boards familiar to Ethan in a way that surprised him. A woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled into a braid stood at a bench soldering something that hissed softly. "Welcome," she said without looking up. "If you're here for the show and tell, I'll pretend I like audiences." She clicked off the iron turned and smiled. "I'm Sana. I wrangle the impatient inventions before we let them out of their cages." Maya laughed. Sana's eyes crinkled at the corners. "Ah," she said. "You're the one Adriana keeps talking about." She pointed to a stool. "Come sit. Tell me why your wing model needs another degree of curve." For 20 minutes, the lab became a classroom. Maya spoke. Sana listened. Sana spoke. Maya listened harder. Ethan watched the way competence and kindness sat comfortably in the same chair here. He watched his daughter's shoulders square under a tension that didn't patronize. He watched the way the world made itself larger around a child who had something to say. When Adriana appeared, she didn't announce herself. She simply stepped into the doorway, a quiet gravity altering the room's center of mass. She wore a charcoal suit that fit like it wasn't trying. Her right arm was no longer in a sling, but she held it carefully, as if it had become a weather vane for pain. Ethan felt the air change in him the way the air changes right before rain. He turned. Their eyes found each other like they had practiced it. "Welcome," she said. No flourish, no performance. Just that word, full. "Walk with me." They moved to a quieter corridor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered the city as a backdrop. On the glass, someone had written equations in dry erase, little galaxies of thought. First, Adriana said, "Thank you for coming. I wanted Maya to see this place." I wanted you to see it too. He nodded, unsure of what else to do with the way his chest felt. It's a lot. I know. She looked out at the water. Fog drifted like slow breath. I live in a world where everything moves too fast. I forget it's too much until someone I respect reminds me. He glanced at her. You respect me. A small smile. You dragged me out of a burning plane. And you see the things that break before they break. That is rare. He thought of the connector, the vents, the slats, the dog-bone grommet. Small things, but small things were how big systems lived or died. A group of people passed at the end of the corridor. Men in tailored suits, shoes that clicked rather than walked. One of them was silver-haired, his profile all angles and confidence, his smile too polished to be anything but sharpened. Two aides flanked him. He didn't look their way, but the space around him tensed. Adriana's gaze flicked toward the group, then away. The movement was tiny. Ethan would have missed it if he weren't paying attention. Who's that? He asked. Victor Sloan. She said, her voice neutral. CEO of Virex Systems. We collaborate on standards boards sometimes. We compete on everything else. Friend rival, she said. And that was the end of it. For now. Back in the lab, Maya held a prototype headband gingerly as if it might flutter away. It feels light, she said, like it wants to be on a head. Sana winked. That's the point. A PR coordinator appeared apologetic. Ms. Vega rehearsal for the gala keynote is in 20. Of course. Adriana checked her watch, repaired uncracked ticking again. She turned to Maya. Will you come to rehearsal? You can watch from backstage. It's less boring than it sounds. Maya looked at Ethan like someone had offered her the moon and asked if she had room in her pocket. Go, he said, and she did half skipping, half floating beside Adriana as if a magnetic field had formed between them. Kendra returned to walk Ethan through a few more labs while they waited. He caught sight of Victor again down in the lobby talking to a man with a camera crew. Victor lifted his head as if he felt eyes on him, and his gaze traveled the atrium until it slid past Ethan and kept going. The camera light flared. Victor smiled his television smile. Does he do press here? Ethan asked. Kendra's mouth thinned. He does press everywhere. By late afternoon, they regrouped in a small auditorium lined with seats like river stones. Adriana stepped onto the stage without fanfare, tested a mic, gave notes with economy. Maya watched from the wing's mouth slightly open, as if witnessing a magician show the trick and somehow make it more magical. When rehearsal wrapped, Adriana walked them to the private elevator. She stood a shade closer to Ethan than a CEO usually stands. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was the something he had been carrying since the night on the porch, when she'd asked him to call her by her name. Tomorrow is the gala, she said. It's pageantry, but it's also a declaration. I want Maya to see what her ideas look like when they walk around in the world. And me? He asked. She considered him openly, unblinking. I want you to see yourself the way we saw you today. The elevator chimed. The doors opened. He didn't move. Neither did she. For a heartbeat, the city held still wheels, cranes, clouds, the whole thing, deciding together to press pause. Then Maya tugged his sleeve. Dad, dinner. He smiled. Dinner. The doors closed. The elevator breathed them down to the ground floor. As they stepped into the lobby, camera bulbs popped near the revolving doors. Victor Sloan's laughter cut through the marble hush like a blade wrapped in velvet. He shook a reporter's hand with the gravity of a man accepting a crown he had already tried on in the mirror. Ethan kept walking. Maya's hand was warm in his. Outside, the evening wind carried salt and the low thrum of the city's heart. The sedan waited. Tomorrow they'd come back for the gala, for the lights, for the unveiling of something that had been born in brains and solder and a storm. Tonight, in the quiet edge before spectacle, he told himself not to borrow trouble. Tonight he let his daughter lean her head on his shoulder as the car climbed the hill. But as the hotel's lights swung closer, he couldn't help looking back over the city's glittering shoulder toward the tower where Adriana rehearsed her future, toward the lobby, where a rival still smiled for cameras, and feel the first small shift of weather again. Like the air just before rain. Tomorrow would teach him what exactly was coming. The night of the gala arrived with a kind of nervous electricity that even the fog couldn't smother. Downtown San Francisco glowed like a chandelier suspended over the bay. The city's pulse quickened as black cars lined up outside City Hall, its grand rotunda transformed into a cathedral of glass, marble, and light. Ethan stood in front of the hotel mirror, wrestling with his tie for the third time. His fingers were too thick, too used to grease and bolts to coax silk into obedience. His father's cufflinks glinted on the dresser's small square tarnished silver, the last relic of a man who had worked with his hands until they failed him. Ethan fastened them anyway, a talisman against feeling out of place. Behind him, Maya emerged from her room in a midnight blue dress that shimmered faintly when she moved. She twirled once, then stopped, cheeks flushed. Is it too much? Too much. Ethan's throat tightened. Kiddo, you look like the whole sky. Her grin spread wide, then softened. Mom would have loved this. The car ride to City Hall was quiet, the hum of the engine competing with Ethan's heartbeat. He stared out the window as the building came into view, draped in banners of silver and blue spotlights sweeping across its dome. The red carpet stretched like a river of fire leading into its open doors. Inside, chandeliers spilled gold across the marble floor. Screens displayed Horizon's history, assistive devices, breakthroughs and software photographs of smiling users whose lives had been changed. Waiters floated past with trays of champagne crystal glasses trembling with pale bubbles. Maya clung to Ethan's arm, her eyes darting everywhere, devouring the spectacle. And then Adriana. She appeared at the top of the staircase, descending with the calm poise of someone born for spotlights, though Ethan knew better. Her gown was black, simple, almost understated, but it carried authority with every fold. Her injured arm, still healing, rested lightly in a jeweled sling. The crowd rippled as she passed executives and dignitaries leaning closer like planets tugged into orbit. But when she reached Ethan and Maya, her smile changed. Softer, personal. You made it. Wouldn't miss it, Ethan managed. Adriana's gaze swept over him, catching on the cufflinks. They suit you. He glanced down, embarrassed. Old things. Not much. Not much, she echoed with a smile that said otherwise. A hand clapped Ethan's shoulder. He turned to see Armin the engineer grinning. The man with the grommet solution. You've caused quite a stir, Mr. Cole. Half the team wants you to consult full-time. Ethan chuckled awkwardly, but before he could answer, another presence slid into their circle. Victor Sloan. Silver hair, silver tie, a glass of champagne, balanced carelessly in his hand. His smile was polished, but his eyes held the sharpness of broken glass. Adriana, he said smoothly. Radiant as ever. Victor, she replied, her voice flat. And this must be... Victor's gaze shifted to Ethan, pausing just long enough to suggest judgment, the local hero. Ethan extended a hand out of habit. Victor took it with a grip too firm, a practiced dominance move. Ethan matched it without thinking, years of torquing stubborn bolts lending him an unspoken edge. Their eyes locked. Impressive story, Victor said, still smiling. Saving our dear Adriana. Almost cinematic. One might think it's staged. Ethan's jaw tightened, but Adriana stepped in. Enough, Victor. Enjoy the champagne. Try not to steal the silverware on your way out. Victor's smile flickered, still sharp. That's why I admire you. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to something only Adriana and Ethan could hear. Enjoy your little show tonight. I look forward to the surprises. Then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd. Adriana exhaled slowly. Ethan caught the faint tremor in her hand before she clasped it behind her back. What was that? He asked quietly. A warning, she said. Before he could press, the lights dimmed. A hush fell across the rotunda. The stage at the far end lit up, framed by curved screens that glowed with Horizon's logo. Adriana's assistant Noah appeared at her elbow. We're ready for you, Miss Vega. She straightened, adjusted her sling, and looked to Ethan and Maya. Wish me luck. You don't need luck, Ethan said. Her eyes lingered on his a moment too long. Stay close. She stepped onto the stage to thunderous applause. The crowd rose, cameras flashed, and the room seemed to lean toward her as if drawn by gravity itself. Adriana began her keynote with practiced ease. She spoke of Horizon's mission technology as a bridge, not a barrier. Stories of children finding their voices, veterans regaining independence, families rebuilding lives. Her words rang with conviction, not marketing polish. Then the reveal. The screens behind her lit up with images of the neural interface, the sleek crown, the promise of thought translated into action. Gasps rippled through the audience. And tonight, Adriana said, you will see it in action, not with a trained engineer, not with a professional, but with someone new, someone curious, someone who reminds us all that technology must be intuitive enough to belong to everyone. The side door opened. Maya walked out. Ethan's chest clenched. He hadn't expected her to be part of the demonstration so soon, but Adriana's hand rested gently on Maya's shoulder, steady guiding. This is Maya Cole, Adriana said. She's 12. She met this device only days ago. Tonight she will show you what is possible. The headset was lowered carefully onto Maya's head. She sat in a chair, center stage, hands resting in her lap, eyes wide but steady. On the screen, a digital environment bloomed, objects, letters, shapes floating in a virtual space. With only the flick of her gaze, Maya selected a cube, rotated it, stacked it with another. Then she typed her name letter by letter, her small movements painting it across the screen in glowing strokes. The crowd erupted in applause. Ethan exhaled. Pride mingled with fear. He scanned the audience instinctively, searching for danger. His gaze caught on Victor Sloan in the front row. He was watching intently, his expression unreadable, but his fingers tapped his champagne glass with a rhythm too precise, too expectant. And then something flickered. On the screen, Maya's letters blurred. The cube she had rotated fractured, multiplied, turned jagged. Maya frowned. It's not doing what I'm telling it. Ethan was on his feet before he knew it, heart pounding. Adriana's eyes snapped to Noah, who was already speaking rapidly into his earpiece. System anomaly detected, he muttered. Possible interference. Adriana leaned close to Maya, her voice calm, though her eyes flashed with urgency. It's okay. Just breathe. We'll pause. But Ethan knew. The way the lights above flickered, the way Victor's lips curved almost imperceptibly. This wasn't an accident. Something was happening. Something meant to break not just a machine, but trust. And his daughter was at the center of it. The rotunda felt like it had tilted. Gasps swept through the audience as the glowing screen distorted letters, stretching collapsing symbols, flickering like a scrambled broadcast. Maya's small shoulders stiffened under the weight of hundreds of staring eyes. Dad, her voice cracked, half whisper, half plea. Ethan surged forward, but security hesitated, forming a wall of professionalism. Adriana's hand lifted, giving him passage. He darted to the edge of the stage, his eyes locked on Maya. It's okay, kiddo. I'm right here, he said, voice firm, steady, even while his gut twisted. The device on Maya's head sparked faintly a hiccup of light. She winced, but didn't cry out. Noah's voice hissed into Adriana's earpiece. Confirmed intrusion. It's not hardware, it's the feed. Someone injected malicious code into the demonstration system. Adriana's jaw hardened. Source working on it, Noah muttered. On the main screen, the simulation warped further shapes, elongating into claws, colors bleeding to static. The crowd murmured confusion, curdling toward panic. Adriana raised her voice over the noise. Ladies and gentlemen, just a minor technical adjustment. We'll continue shortly. Her tone was calm, commanding, but Ethan caught the tremor of urgency in her eyes as she leaned toward him. Get it off her. He didn't hesitate. In 2 strides, he was beside Maya, fingers working at the crown. The clasp stuck too sleek for calloused hands, but adrenaline made him precise. Hold still, baby. I am, Maya whispered. Her voice shaking, eyes wide as the corrupted display flickered violently. The crown popped loose. Ethan yanked it away, cradling it in his palm like something venomous. The screen behind them froze, the chaos vanishing into a blank horizon blue logo. Applause didn't come, only uneasy silence. Adriana straightened, turned back to the microphone, and smiled a smile sharp enough to hold the room together. This is why we have redundancies. Tonight you'll see resilience in action. Behind her, Noah signaled frantically to the tech team. We need full lockdown, shut every non-essential system, and find the entry point. Ethan crouched to Maya's level. You okay? Her lips trembled, but she nodded fiercely. It was like Someone else was steering. I couldn't stop it. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, heart pounding harder at her words. Someone else. From the crowd, Victor Sloane's measured clap broke the silence. Slow, ironic, cutting, well handled. Adriana, he called out, voice smooth as glass. Even the best technology needs improvement. Ethan's head snapped toward him, fury burning through restraint. But Adriana raised a hand steady, stopping him from charging down into the audience. Mr. Sloane, she said, her smile widening, teeth glinting under the chandelier light. Thank you for reminding us why Horizon innovates, where others merely imitate. The audience tittered nervously. Cameras caught everything. Victor's smirk held, but Ethan saw the muscle in his jaw twitch before he leaned back in his chair, sipping champagne like poison. Noah appeared at Ethan's side. We've isolated the breach. It originated from inside the building. His eyes darted nervously toward the staff entrances. Someone fed code into the maintenance network. Intentional sabotage. Ethan's hand clenched around the headset. And my daughter was the target. Collateral? Noah corrected grimly. But yes. Security shifted discreetly, moving toward the wings. Adriana spoke smoothly to the audience, buying time, pivoting her keynote to broader mission statements. But Ethan's mind roared with a different rhythm. He had seen sabotage before, the marks it left, the timing, the arrogance, and this had Victor Sloane's fingerprints smeared all over it. Maya tugged at his sleeve. Dad, I don't want to ruin her show. You didn't, Ethan said fiercely. This wasn't you, this was them. Her chin lifted at the steel in his voice. Behind them, the backup demo came online. Another volunteer and engineer this time slipped into the chair, donning a secondary headset, not connected to the corrupted feed. The display stabilized. Shapes moved cleanly, words typed smoothly. The audience, eager to be impressed, leaned forward again, swept back into the performance. But Ethan wasn't watching the screen. He was watching Victor Sloane. The man had leaned toward one of his aides, lips moving without a sound, eyes glinting like a wolf who had tested the fence and found it weak. Adriana finished the keynote with the polish of a professional who had rehearsed for months. Applause thundered, though a nervous undercurrent lingered. Investors clapped. Journalists scribbled. The machine of spectacle spun on. When the lights rose, Adriana made her way backstage. Her mask cracked the moment the curtain fell behind her. She dropped the smile, exhaling sharply, and turned to Noah. How close did we come? Too close, Noah said. If Ethan hadn't pulled the unit... Her eyes flicked to Ethan, gratitude and fear mingling. You saved her. Again. He shook his head. I shouldn't have had to. Silence hung heavy until Maya whispered. It felt alive. Like someone whispering in my brain. Adriana knelt despite the pain in her arm, taking Maya's hands. That shouldn't have happened. And it won't again. I promise you. Ethan watched her eyes, saw the steel there, but also the shadow. She wasn't surprised. Not really. Which meant she had known the danger was real before tonight, and hadn't told him. He turned away, jaw tight, his pulse thundering in his ears. The gala wound down in glitter and wine. Guests drifted toward exits, chatter buzzing about innovation and disruption and scandal. Outside cameras flashed as black cars lined up once more. Adriana's team herded her into a secure corridor, but she stopped at the door, her gaze finding Ethan and Maya. Come with me, she said. We need to talk. They followed her into a smaller chamber, a private lounge with glass walls overlooking the city's glowing grid. Once the doors sealed, Adriana let out the breath she'd been holding. It wasn't a malfunction, she said flatly. It was sabotage. Someone wanted to embarrass Horizon, and they nearly endangered Maya in the process. You mean Victor? Ethan snapped. Her silence was answer enough. You knew, Ethan pressed. You suspected this before the crash, before tonight, and you still let her go on stage. Adriana's composure faltered, her voice softening. I thought we had the security locked down. I thought I could protect her. Ethan stepped closer, eyes burning. She's 12. She's my daughter. She's not a prop for your war. The words landed between them like broken glass. Adriana flinched, but her chin lifted, refusing to yield. She's not a prop. She's brilliant. And the world saw that brilliance tonight even for a moment. That matters. Ethan's hands shook. He looked at Maya, her wide eyes darting between them. Adriana's phone buzzed sharply. She glanced at the screen. Her expression hardened. It's worse than I thought. She handed the device to Ethan. On it, security footage played a man in a maintenance uniform planting a small black device into a server rack. The timestamp matched the moment Maya's headset had glitched. The camera angle caught just enough of the man's face to show his smirk. Victor's aide. Ethan's jaw clenched until his teeth hurt. The war wasn't hypothetical anymore. It was already at their doorstep, and it had used his daughter as the battlefield. The night sky over San Francisco burned with 1,000 city lights, but Ethan felt only darkness pressing in. They rode in silence. The black SUV hummed across wet streets, headlights sliding over glass towers. Maya leaned against his side, her breath slow, steady now that exhaustion had pulled her under. Ethan held her close, fingers absently brushing her hair back, but his eyes never left the streaks of neon rushing past the window. Adriana sat across from him, her sling cradling her arm, her expression unreadable. Her phone lay dark on her lap, though Ethan suspected it buzzed endlessly with messages. Finally, he broke the silence. She could have been hurt. More than hurt. Adriana's gaze lifted. I know, that's not enough. His voice was low, dangerous. You knew Victor was circling. You suspected sabotage. And still you put her on that stage. Her lips pressed thin. She leaned forward, careful not to wake Maya. Listen to me. I believed the safeguards would hold. My people swore the systems were clean. We checked. Double-checked. But Victor? Her eyes burned. Victor always finds cracks, and he never cares who gets cut. Ethan wanted to argue, to rage, but Maya stirred, murmuring something about her science fair, and his fury caught in his throat. He couldn't shatter her fragile peace with his anger. Instead, he whispered, She's all I've got. If anything happens to her... Adriana's eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. Then let me help you keep her safe. The SUV pulled into the underground garage of Horizon Tower. Security swarmed, scanning mirrors, sealing doors. Diana was there, her sharp gaze sweeping every shadow. She nodded once to Ethan, a soldier's silent reassurance. They ushered Maya into a guest suite on the top-floor plush linen city skyline. Through tall windows, every luxury unfamiliar to a girl raised on second-hand furniture and homemade curtains. Maya's eyes fluttered open briefly. It looks like a castle, she whispered, then sank back into sleep. Ethan tucked her in, lingered by her bedside until her breathing deepened again. When he stepped out, Adriana was waiting in the corridor. Walk with me. They moved through quiet halls lined with art and soft lighting. Eventually, she led him into her private office, glass walls, steel beams, a sweeping view of the bay. Shelves of prototype devices glimmered under muted spotlights, pieces of tomorrow scattered like jewels. Adriana crossed to a secure terminal. With a thumbprint and voice code, a wall panel slid open, revealing files marked with the Horizon crest. She hesitated only a second before opening one. On the screen, photographs of her own brain scans, medical notes, reports dated 3 years ago. I haven't told anyone outside my inner circle, she said quietly. Not the board, not investors. But you deserve to know the truth. Ethan's stomach tightened. What truth? I was diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's. Her words fell heavy, deliberate. I built Project Helios, what you've seen called the neural interface, because I needed it. At first for me, then for everyone who might come after me, for the millions living with conditions that steal their bodies before their time. Ethan stared at the images, white streaks of deterioration mapped across her brain. The strong, unshakable woman in front of him had been carrying this shadow silently, all while commanding an empire. Does anyone else know? He asked. 5 people, she said. Now 6. Why me? Because you've risked your life for mine. Twice. Because I trust you more than most people. I pay millions to protect me. And because tonight proved that you and Maya are already part of this, whether I want it or not. Ethan turned away, pacing the length of the office, the city glowing like fire at his back. So Victor isn't just trying to humiliate you. He wants this technology because it's not just about money, it's about control. Yes. Her voice sharpened. If Mercer Technologies gets even a fragment, they'll twist it, turn it into something exclusive, expensive, inaccessible. A tool for the privileged, not salvation for the vulnerable. Ethan stopped, planted his palms on her desk, and leaned across it. Then why didn't you walk away? Why fly into storms? Why put my kid in the line of fire? Adriana met his anger with calm. Because some fights you don't get to walk away from. And because Victor won't stop. He tried to kill me once already. The crash wasn't an accident. We found tampering on the fuel line. Subtle, but deliberate. The words struck him like a fist. He saw again the flames, the cracked watch, the way her limp body had felt in his arms, and rage bloomed hot in his chest. Then we take him down, Ethan said. Adriana studied him. You say that like a soldier. He held her gaze. I was. Before life decided I'd be a grease monkey and a single dad. But sabotage infiltration. I know how to read those scars, and I know how to fight back. Her lips curved, not quite a smile, but something close. Which is why I want you at Horizon, officially, head of practical applications. We need someone who can see what others miss, and Maya, she deserves every door this place can open. Ethan swallowed hard. The offer wasn't new, but the weight of it was heavier now. His farmhouse, his debts, his quiet life, they all seemed to shrink against the enormity of this world she was offering. He looked out at the bay, the bridge lights blinking like a promise in the fog. I'll think about it. Adriana nodded. That's all I ask. Silence lingered thick but not hostile. Ethan's mind raced with images Maya in a castle-like suite, Sarah's photo on the mantel, back home. Victor's cold smirk in the rotunda. Finally he said, If I do this, it's not for you, it's for her. I wouldn't expect otherwise, Adriana said. And for the first time since the crash, she looked tired. Human. Ethan turned toward the door but paused. Adriana, if you ever put Maya in danger like that again, no amount of trust will save you. She nodded once, solemn. Understood. And for the first time, he believed she meant it. Ethan didn't sleep. The city breathed beneath the glass like some silver animal, quiet, watchful, alive. Red tail lights flowed down the Embarcadero boats, blinked out on the black water fog, pressed its cheek to the window, and smeared the lights into halos. Maya slept in the guest room, a pale shape under layers of linen hair fanned across the pillow, lashes motionless. Each time she shifted, Ethan's body tightened. Each time she sighed, the coil in his chest loosened a fraction. He sat in the chair by the window, boots on the carpet, hands knotted. The useless crown, sleek, beautiful, dangerous, lay on the coffee table like a quiet animal that might bite again. He hated it. He wanted it to work. He wanted both truths to live in the same room and not tear each other apart. A soft knock. Adriana stood in the doorway barefoot, a gray cardigan softening the edge of the woman who had faced 1,000 cameras. Her sling cradled her arm. The city light made her eyes look darker, deeper. Can't sleep, she asked. Not tonight. She glanced toward Maya's room. She hasn't stirred. Noah's arranged a neurology team at sunrise. We'll scan, not guess. Thank you, he said and meant it. She stepped in, closed the door quietly behind her, and crossed to the window. For a long beat, they watched the bridge lights blink in patient rhythm. She's brave, Adriana said. And you are a mountain. He didn't look at her. Mountains fall too. Her gaze touched his bandaged hand. I know. We renamed the internal fork of the project after the crash, she added softly, as if changing the subject was a mercy. We called it Helios for a while, to throw off anyone listening. Publicly, it's still Icarus. So you fly close to the sun while you pretend you aren't, he said. A faint smile. Something like that. Silence pressed in again, not hostile, the kind that lets two separate storms drift alongside each other without colliding. You shouldn't have put her up there, he said at last, voice low. But you did. So now you don't get to be wrong again. I won't be, she said. Not bravado. A vow. Dawn unstitched the night, a white seam at the horizon. The city yawned and stretched. By 7, a discreet hospital suite had been cleared. White walls, machines with screens that pulsed like quiet hearts, a neurologist with calm hands and a voice that never rose above warm, adhesive sensors, a soft cap for monitoring, gentle questions, any headache, dizziness, flashing lights. Just hungry, Maya said. Is that a symptom? It can be, the doctor said gravely, then winked. Ethan stood beside the bed, fingers hooked in his belt loop, like a man trying to keep from pacing a groove into the floor. Adriana stood back, letting the expert's move expression unreadable, except for the small twitch at the corner of her mouth when the machine beeped slightly faster. The scans ran. Time stumbled. The doctor typed. The printer hummed. Good news, she said, finally turning the monitor so Ethan could see. No abnormalities. No evidence of neural interference. The device's interruption was at the interface, not the cortex. She's fine. Fine. The word hit him like a wave. He nodded once, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. Maya grinned, then rolled her eyes when he kissed her hair 3 times in a row, like a superstition he'd just invented. Adriana exhaled, shoulders easing a fraction. Thank you, she told the doctor, and it sounded like thank you for the world continuing a little longer. Back at Horizon Tower, Diana was waiting with news that made the room feel suddenly smaller. We detained a subcontractor posing as maintenance. He planted a disruption device in a panel feeding the demo floor. He's not talking, but we pulled his phone, she said, concise as always. It contains encrypted messages linking to someone in Victor Sloan's orbit. Not enough for an arrest, enough for a war. Ethan's fingers curled. Then we treat it like one. Diana's eyes flicked to Adriana. Orders would come from her. Adriana didn't hesitate. Escalate legal. Fortify networks. Silence the press until we control the narrative. She turned to Ethan. And you take Maya home. Pack essentials. Come back tonight. Move into the executive residence. He stared at her. Move temporarily, she said. Non-negotiable. I can protect her. You can protect her here better, she replied, and the steel in it told him she'd chosen between options he didn't like and picked survival over pride. We've already seen unusual queries and background systems targeting your address. Someone's looking, and I'm not giving them the courtesy of finding anything. He wanted to argue, to hold on to the familiar, the porch, the old stairs, the shape of a life he knew how to hold in both hands. Then his phone buzzed. Mrs. Alvarez. Ethan. Her voice was tight. There's an envelope on your porch. No return address. I didn't open it, but it doesn't feel right. He closed his eyes. I'm on my way. Adriana watched his face as he ended the call. She didn't ask what was inside. She already knew it would be something designed to push him, to corner him. I'll send a team, she said. He shook his head. Send them if you want. But I'm going home. With Maya. I'm coming, Adriana said. No, he said automatically. Yes. She held his gaze. You saved my life in your field. You think I'm sending you into yours alone? He didn't have time to be moved by that. He had a house to reach before the next line was crossed. The drive back to the farmhouse felt longer than it should have. The storm had wrung the fields out. Puddles shone like mercury in the ruts. The corn had recovered its posture, green shoulders squared. The black scar where metal had bitten earth had paled under rain and sun, but it was still there. A reminder that sky can fall. Mrs. Alvarez met them at the porch apron, still on eyes flashing with the particular wrath reserved for people who threaten children. She held up a large manila envelope with gloved fingers. Diana's idea surely, and made the sign of the cross twice for insurance. Ethan slipped on a pair of nitrile gloves from the med kit in the truck. He slid a butter knife under the flap. Photographs. Grainy telephoto. Him and Maya at the airport. Him and Maya entering Horizon Tower. The two of them through the window of the Fairmont suite, silhouettes against the glass, the image taken from somewhere high and across the street. No note, no signature. Just the message baked into the angle, we see you. Maya's breath hitched. Dad. It's okay, he said, though every cell in him had accelerated. This is noise. It's meant to scare. It's working, she whispered. Adriana took in the spread with a glance, face going very still. We escalate, she told Diana, who had already started photographing the photographs. Full protective protocol. Mrs. Alvarez touched Ethan's arm. Don't try to be a wall by yourself. Walls crack. I know, he said, and his voice almost broke because he had been a wall for years and the hairline fractures were spidering. They packed in 30 minutes. The bare minimum clothes, textbooks, Maya's wing model, the family photo from the mantle, the recipe book with his grandmother's handwriting, Sarah's favorite mug. He walked room to room one last time, palm on door frames, inventorying the life he had built in the wreckage of grief. He paused at the mantle. Sarah smiled back at him from the county fair sunlight flaring through her hair. He slid the frame into a box and whispered, "We'll come back." On the way out, he locked the door and checked it twice, as if that would matter against people who took pictures through windows. Adriana stood by the truck, not giving orders, not hurrying him, simply present. When he lifted the last box, she took it with her good hand before he could protest. "Thought you didn't carry things," he said. "I do now," she said. The executive residence was a fortress disguised as a dream. Top floor, private elevator, a foyer with a piece of art that looked like a horizon made of glass and light. Floor-to-ceiling windows carved the bay into panels. The security systems were everywhere and nowhere, sensors tucked into crown-molding cameras disguised as smoke detectors. A silent feedback in the walls that told Ethan someone smart had written the rules the building lived by. "Your biometrics are keyed," Diana said, handing Ethan a slim card. "Anyway, habit meets redundancy. Perimeter is covered, concierge is vetted. We rotate teams. You'll see them. You'll also forget they're there. That's the goal." Maya wandered from room to room, fingers trailing the edge of the kitchen island, stopping dead at the smallest bedroom. It had already been furnished for her. A junior workbench along one wall, storage cubbies, a pegboard with hooks for tools, a stack of science books, a model plane kit identical to the one in the hotel basket. Above the desk, a framed print that read, "Make the sky argue with you." Maya pressed her palm to the desk. "Did you—" Adriana hovered in the doorway. "We started it after the crash," she said. "Finished it last night." Maya turned eyes bright. "Thank you." Adriana smiled, the kind that carried effort and joy. Build something that annoys gravity. That afternoon, while Horizon's legal team sharpened its teeth and security rewove the net, they learned how to live in a place where the door beeped softly if it didn't close all the way and the coffee machine required a manual. Ethan figured out the lights. Maya figured out the view. Adriana figured out how to pace with an arm that ached when the fog rolled in. A text pinged on Ethan's phone. Unknown number. "Ask Vega why Helios really exists." He held the screen out. "They're trying to pry." "I told you," she said quietly. "I already did." He nodded. He believed her. He still felt the tug of wanting to run every time the world reached for his daughter. Trust, he was discovering, grows in inches. Fear arrives in miles. Near dusk, a gull coasted by at eye-level heat from the building, lifting it gently, the wingtips twitching in micro-corrections. Maya leaned against the glass and followed it with her finger. "Dad, look. He's balancing. He's arguing with the sky." He stepped up behind her, rested a hand on her shoulder. Watched the bird ride a seam he couldn't see but felt in his bones. 2 floors below, a delivery van idled a beat too long at the service entrance. Diana's voice crackled on a secure channel. "Team 3 eyes on the loading dock. Confirm plates." The van rolled on. The channel went quiet. The apartment seemed to exhale. On the counter, the manila envelope lay inside an evidence bag. On the mantel, the county fair photo leaned against a vase that didn't yet know it belonged to them. On the coffee table, Ethan's phone face down vibrated once more. Another unknown number. He didn't pick it up. He went to the window and stood in the wash of city glow until his heartbeat matched the blinking of the bridge lights. Behind him, Adriana's voice low, steady. "One more thing." He turned. She held out a slim badge. Embedded chip. Horizon printed in small, neat letters. Below it, Ethan Cole, Director, Practical Applications Interim. He didn't take it right away. The title looked heavier than anything he'd ever carried. Interim, she said gently. Consulting, if that's easier. No contracts tonight, no decisions you can't unmake. But come downstairs in the morning. Look at the prototype housings with Priya. Tell us where they'll crack. We'll fix them before they do. He reached, took the badge. It was warm from her hand. I'm not doing this for you, he said. I know, she said. That's why I want you to do it. His phone buzzed a third time. He flipped it over, thumb hovering, then answering before caution could argue. Mr. Cole. A disguised voice. Male. Filtered. You don't know me, but you want to. I have proof of who ordered the maintenance breach. Photographs. Transfers. You'll get them if you meet me alone. The call clicked off. The room felt suddenly colder. Ethan looked at Adriana, at Diana, at his daughter's reflection in the glass. He felt the old training uncoil in him, the part that knows when bait is bait and still wants to take it because the fish needs catching. We're being watched, he said. We were always being watched. Now they want me in the open. Adriana's eyes didn't waver. Then we decide who does the watching. Outside, night finished swallowing the last strip of light. Inside, 3 people stood facing a pane of glass that pretended to be the world and chose each other over retreat. Ethan placed the badge on the table beside the evidence bag. He folded his arms. He thought of the manila envelope of the gull's easy balance, of the way a mountain learns to move without crumbling. Tomorrow, he said, we start. And somewhere 2 floors below, an elevator hummed, waiting to carry them down into a war they hadn't asked for and could no longer avoid. The morning broke, slow fog curling across the bay like pale smoke, muffling the sound of the city beneath. From the penthouse windows, Ethan watched ships inch through the water, their horns low and mournful. The world outside seemed distant, like a stage where other people lived normal lives. Inside, the air carried the taut silence of decisions waiting to be made. Maya shuffled into the kitchen in her pajamas, hair tangled, rubbing her eyes. Dad, do we still have school today? Her voice was casual, but the question held weight. School routine normalcy words that had slipped through their fingers since the crash. Ethan crouched beside her, brushing hair from her face. We'll figure it out, kiddo. You'll keep learning, just in a different way for now. Adriana entered, then carrying 2 mugs of coffee, one of them set in front of Ethan without asking. She looked rested, but Ethan knew better. Her kind of people never slept fully. They only borrowed time in fragments. Morning, Maya, Adriana said warmly. I took the liberty of contacting Dr. Washington at the Young Innovators program. They'll send over modules and projects. You'll be ahead of your classmates when you return. Maya blinked, then smiled, still shy but hopeful. Really? You mean, like real engineering projects? Adriana's eyes softened. The realist. Ethan caught that look, the unguarded one she reserved for his daughter. It made him uneasy because it was genuine, because it threatened the lines he tried so hard to draw. The day unfolded in layers of tension. Diana briefed them on the overnight security sweep. No suspicious activity logged in the building after the van incident. Digital forensics traced last night's call through 3 layers of spoofing. Dead end, but professional. Which means Ethan muttered they'll try again. And probably smarter. He still had the badge Adriana had given him, still hadn't clipped it to his shirt. It sat on the counter, gleaming in the early light. Are you ready? Adriana asked. He met her gaze. For what? To see. What it feels like, she said simply. To be part of this world. They descended in the private elevator, Diana flanking them. Horizon's R&D floor opened wide walls of glass tables littered with prototypes, humming 3D printers, engineers bent over glowing screens. Ethan felt eyes lift, linger on him, then dart away. He didn't belong, and he knew it. Priya, a lead engineer with sharp eyes and faster words, approached, carrying the curved shell of the neural headset. Director Cole, she asked, emphasizing the new title. We've been dying to pick your brain about the honeycomb structure idea. It's brilliant. Ethan shifted, uncomfortable. It was common sense. No, Priya said it was perspective. We're drowning in equations. You saw what we didn't. He studied the housing in her hands, fingers itching. Against his better judgment, he took it, turned it over, examined the joins. This ridge is weak, he murmured. Stress fractures will crawl here after a few months. Priya nodded eagerly. Exactly. That's what we missed. Ethan explained, his hands sketching shapes in the air, his voice steadier as muscle memory took over. For a moment, the wariness lifted. Machines, he understood. They had rules. They broke in predictable ways. Unlike people. Maya watched, chin propped on her hands, her eyes shining with pride. By noon, Ethan had been pulled into 3 separate design conversations. Engineers leaned in, taking notes as if his every word carried weight. Adriana lingered at the edge of the circle, her broken arm in its sling, her eyes never leaving him. She saw what he refused to admit, that he was sliding into this world more easily than he thought possible. But just as comfort settled, Diana appeared, expression taut. "Mr. Cole, we've got something." They followed her to a secure room where a monitor displayed still frames, surveillance footage, a man in a maintenance uniform slipping into a server corridor at the same time Ethan had chased Mercer's decoy. The uniform didn't match Horizon contractors. He moved with precision, deliberate. Ethan leaned closer. "He's not improvising. He knows the layout." Adriana crossed her arms. "Inside help," Diana nodded grimly. "Possible. We're running cross-checks." Another frame appeared, the man glancing up at a camera just for a second. His face was clear, hard lines under the brim of the cap. Ethan's stomach clenched. "I know him." His voice dropped. "That's Kane. Used to be logistics specialist, same division as me overseas. He vanished after a dishonorable discharge." Adriana's eyes narrowed. "And now he's working for Victor." Ethan exhaled slowly, rage curling inside him. Kane had been ruthless, efficient, a man who never blinked at collateral damage. If Victor had him, the war wasn't just corporate anymore, it was tactical. Diana closed the feed. "We'll flag him across our systems." "No," Ethan said firmly. "You'll miss him. He knows how to ghost, but I know how he thinks." The room stilled. Adriana's gaze locked with his. "Then we use that." He shook his head. "Not with Maya here." "Maya stays safe," Adriana countered. "But Ethan, you've been running from what you are. You were trained for this. Maybe fate dragged you back because we need you now." He wanted to deny it, but the photographs on his porch, the call, Kane's face on that monitor, there was no denying anymore. Maya's voice piped up behind him. She had slipped into the doorway, listening. "Dad!" He turned, startled. She looked smaller than ever against the heavy door. "I don't want you to fight. I just want you to fix things." Her words struck deeper than any order. He crouched to her level. "Sometimes fixing means fighting, kiddo. But I promise I'll fight smart." Her eyes searched his face, then she nodded slowly. "Okay, just come back." Back upstairs, while Maya bent over her project in her new room, Ethan stood by the window with Adriana. The bay lay open, cold and infinite. He could see the bridge, the fog swallowing its middle like a throat swallowing a secret. "You're in this now," Adriana said softly. "With me." He didn't answer right away. He thought of Sarah, of the photo in his wallet, of promises whispered into empty rooms. He thought of Maya, of the way she looked at him when she said, "Just come back." Finally, he nodded. "Then we do this my way." Adriana tilted her head. "And what way is that?" He turned to her, jaw set. "We stop waiting for Victor to move. We find him first." Her lips curved, half approval, half warning. "Then you'd better be ready, because once you take the fight to him, there's no walking back." Outside, the fog rolled thicker, and somewhere in its shifting depths, Ethan swore he could already feel Victor Sloane's eyes waiting. Night came early, swallowed whole by fog. The penthouse lights glowed against the mist, a lantern above the bay. Ethan stood at the window, arms crossed, watching the city blink faintly through the haze. Every sound carried horns, sirens, even the hush of tires on wet asphalt. It felt like the world was holding its breath. Behind him, Adriana's team moved in quiet efficiency. Diana spoke into her earpiece, issuing clipped instructions. A second agent unpacked a case of compact surveillance gear. The air hummed with tension. Maya sat at the dining table, shoulders hunched over her wing model, trying to lose herself in balsa wood and glue. But every so often her eyes flicked toward her father, searching for reassurance he couldn't quite give. Finally she spoke. "Dad, what happens now?" Ethan turned, crouched beside her chair. He touched her hand lightly. "Now, we get smart. We don't wait for trouble, we look for it. Her brow furrowed. That sounds like fighting. Sometimes fixing means fighting, he admitted, echoing his earlier promise. But we'll do it carefully. She studied him a long moment, then nodded with a maturity that twisted his chest. She had Sarah's eyes, the same determined calm that could slice through storms. Adriana approached then, hair damp from the shower, dressed down in dark jeans and a simple sweater. It startled Ethan seeing her stripped of the armor of suits and boardrooms. She looked human, vulnerable, almost out of place among her own bodyguards. I spoke with our legal counsel, she said. We can push charges against Victor once we have Kane tied directly to him, but court cases take time. We can't rely on slow machinery. Ethan rose. Which means we get ahead of him. She nodded. Yes. You said you knew how Kane thinks. Use that. Where would he go next? Ethan closed his eyes briefly, calling up memories he'd buried deep, dusty fobs overseas nights when men like Kane thrived on chaos. Kane never acted without a fallback. He always built redundancies. And he liked to use blind spots, places official eyes ignored. He'll try to slip through secondary contractors, Ethan murmured. The kind hired for cleanup maintenance logistics. The people nobody notices. He'll ride their access like a ghost. Adriana tilted her head. And how do we catch a ghost by being the shadow he doesn't see? Ethan replied. His voice had the clipped edge of command now, the part of himself he thought he'd left on foreign soil. Diana interjected. We've already flagged anomalies in subcontractor records. 2 fake identities slipped through onboarding last month, both with access to electrical corridors. Ethan's eyes sharpened. That's his wedge. Adriana gestured toward him. Then you'll lead the sweep. Quietly. Tonight. He hesitated. With Maya here. She stays under guard. Non-negotiable, Adriana said firmly. Then softer. Ethan, you're not alone this time. Let us stand with you. The weight of her words landed heavy. He looked at her, saw the truth in her gaze. She was as bound in this as he was. An hour later, Ethan was in Horizon's service levels. Gone was the penthouse glass and marble. Here the air smelled of copper and machine oil, the ceilings low and pipes sweating condensation. He wore plain clothes but carried himself like a soldier, every step calculated. Diana flanked him with 2 men at her back, their weapons hidden but ready. They moved corridor by corridor, scanning badge records, checking maintenance panels. Half an hour passed with nothing but silence, until Ethan's instincts flared. A faint sound, a latch settling. Too slow, too deliberate. He raised his hand, halting the team. He gestured toward a junction ahead where 2 corridors met in a sharp angle. Diana nodded, splitting off one agent to loop behind. Ethan stepped forward. Heart steady, breath shallow. Kane, he called softly. Voice echoing just enough. You always were terrible at ghosts. The silence stretched. Then a figure emerged, tall lean cap pulled low. His smirk was the same as years ago, cruel and casual. Well, if it isn't Cole, Kane drawled. Didn't think I'd see your face again. Thought you were done playing soldier. Didn't think you'd fall this far, Ethan said. Kane's smile widened. Far, I finally found someone who pays what I'm worth. You, on the other hand, fixing cars in Nowheresville? You always aimed too low. Ethan's fists clenched. You're playing with lives. Always did, Kane replied easily. Just usually the other side's. Now it's whoever the client wants. He tilted his head. And right now, that's Chen. And maybe her pet mechanic if he doesn't move. Diana lifted her weapon a fraction. Kane's eyes flicked amused. Careful. You fire, and my friends elsewhere in this building pull a plug you'll regret. Ethan's blood iced. You wired redundancies. Of course, Kane said, grinning. Didn't I teach you anything? The moment stretched brittle as glass. Then Diana's earpiece crackled. Control here system spike detected in sublevel 3. Possible breach. Kane smirked. And there it is. Ethan lunged faster than thought. His shoulder hit Kane, driving him back into the wall. The man grunted but twisted, shoving Ethan hard. They grappled in the dim corridor, fists slamming boots, scraping against concrete. Kane was still strong, still dirty in a fight. But Ethan had rage Kane couldn't match. Rage and something purer fear for his daughter upstairs. A punch connected splitting Kane's lip. He spat blood and laughed. You still got it, Cole, but you won't stop it. Sloane's already inside your world, and he doesn't lose. Ethan slammed him harder against the wall. We'll see. Diana's team restrained Kane, snapping cuffs on his wrists. He didn't resist, still smirking through blood. See you soon, he promised. Because this isn't over. You're in it now, Cole. Deep. Ethan's breath came harsh, his hand throbbing where knuckles had split again. Back upstairs, Maya was waiting, pale but determined. She ran into him the moment he stepped inside, clinging tight. He hugged her fiercely, his shirt damp with sweat, the scent of oil and concrete clinging to him. Adriana stood by the window, arms folded, watching. You caught him? For now, Ethan said, voice rough. But he's not the problem. He's just the shadow. The hand behind him is what we need to break. And you're ready for that, she asked quietly. He looked at Maya, at the fear in her eyes and the fire behind it. He looked back at Adriana, her arm still in its sling, her face a mask of strength hiding her own scars. Yes, he said. I'm ready. Outside the fog thickened, swallowing the skyline. But inside 3 Lives stood a line, tired, battered, but no longer alone. By morning, the fog had moved in like a slow army. It pressed its soft weight against the glass, swallowed bridge lights, blurred sirens into a single faraway hum. The building breathed differently when you had a man like Kane locked in its concrete belly. Vents hissed a little louder. Doors settled twice. Radios spoke with fewer words. Maya sat at the dining table in an oversized hoodie pencil tucked behind her ear laptop, open to the young innovator's portal. She chewed the end of the pencil like it might sharpen itself with patience. Modules glowed on the screen, fluid dynamics materials, fatigue, a challenge to design a hinge that didn't fail. I like hinges, she said to no one in particular. They're polite. They agree to move and also to stop. Ethan poured coffee he didn't want and drifted a hand over her hair. Polite hinges are underrated. Adriana stepped in barefoot, sling-neat cardigan, soft. The pressed lines of a night without real sleep barely visible at the corners of her eyes. She placed a small plate by Maya's elbow, sliced apple, a pinch cup of peanut butter, a paper napkin folded into a rough airplane. Maya looked up, startled by the domesticity from a woman who ran a tower. Thanks. Engineers eat, Adriana said lightly. Everyone else only thinks. Maya grinned and bit an apple slice. Ethan watched the exchange, a flicker of something unwieldy and warm moving behind his ribs. He stepped away before it had time to take a shape he'd have to name. Downstairs, the room was cold on purpose. Concrete, a table, 2 chairs, a camera with a red eye. Kane sat with his cuffs resting against the table as if they were an accessory, not a containment. Lower lip split, smirk intact. Diana stood behind the mirrored glass with 2 agents, stance quiet and loaded. Adriana stood to the side, arms folded, face like a door. Let me talk to him, Ethan said. You don't owe him a second of air, Diana murmured. I owe Maya the version of me that ends this faster, Ethan replied. Adriana's gaze flicked to his bandaged knuckles, then back to his face. 5 minutes, she said. On record. Ethan entered. The door whispered shut with a weighted click. Kane's smirk warmed a degree. There he is, the hero of aisle 5. You look good under fluorescent. You look worse under cuffs, Ethan said, sitting. He didn't lean back. He didn't blink more than necessary. He let the room slow until he owned the seconds. Names, contacts, who pays, where you sleep when you're not fouling my air. Kane snorted. You lost your poetry in the motor pool. This is me being polite. Something like respect twitched across Kane's face and vanished. You want the headline, Sloane pays. He always pays. But he isn't stupid. He hires 3 people to do 1 job, then fires 2 bullets at the end. You think I'm his only hand, cute. Where does he keep you? Ethan asked evenly. Where do you plug in? Kane tilted his head, feigning thought. There's a pier with rusted bones and a dry dock that smells like salt and debt. There's a man who rents storage units under names you can't pronounce and fills them with nothing but air and excuses. There's a coffee shop that sells forgiveness in paper cups, and a backroom printer that prints the money to buy it. Addresses, Ethan said. Kane's smile sharpened. Ask nicely. Ethan placed both hands flat on the table. You came after a child. Kane's eyes flicked unbothered. Collateral is just a word people use when they want to sleep. The concrete in Ethan's voice turned to steel. You think I'll hit you? That's what you want. A bruise to show the lawyer. I'm not your story, Kane. I'm the end of it. Their old training hovered between them, a language of stillness and breath, and where anger drains if you let it. Kane looked away first, not as defeat, but as strategy. Midnight, he said, finally, almost bored. Pier 47, South Tower of the Dry Dock. You like shadows? You'll like it there. And Cole. His eyes lifted, bright as a coin you shouldn't pick up. Don't bring your suits. Sloane has eyes that eat uniforms. Ethan stood. Good. I don't like uniforms. He paused at the door. The camera's red light burned. The fog pressed. The room waited to see which man spun which story. You taught me something once, Ethan said without turning. You said if a system looks unbreakable, you're looking at the wrong seam. Kane's laugh rattled the glass. Say hi to your seam. Back behind the mirror, Diana's jaw flexed. A trap. Of course, Adriana said. But a map, too. They climbed back into the light and glass and blue sky that the tower insisted it owned even when fog argued. In a conference room, legal and PR waited with sober expressions, phones face down, pens lined like little fences. On a screen, headlines flickered from overnight Horizon Gala glitch, what went wrong. Rival CEO seen at event coincidence or calculated neural interface, miracle or marketing. Investors want reassurance, legal said. The board wants answers. The world wants blood or failing that a narrative. Give them one? Adriana replied, voice flat. Truth minus what hands them a weapon. We were attacked. We repelled. We're reinforcing. No users impacted. The device is safe. Victor will leak, PR murmured. He'll go after the origin story. He'll whisper Helios into the right ears. The room's temperature shifted. Ethan felt the attention turn sideways, then land on Adriana like a weight. She didn't flinch. If he does, we decide whether to undercut him by telling it ourselves. Legal looked pained. Disclosure of a personal medical condition invites volatility. Stock impact. Lawsuits. Board panic. Truth also invites trust, Ethan said quietly. The table turned to him. He wasn't wearing the badge. He still spoke like he had permission. He looked at Adriana, not the room. If he's going to weaponize what you live with, take the sharp edge out of his hand. Adriana's gaze held his. A tremor fought for a corner of her right hand, a flicker so small most would miss it. She placed her left hand over it, an impatient embrace that looked like a command. Not yet, she said. We don't give him the gift of timing. We give ourselves a day to build the scaffolding under the truth. Ethan nodded once. Then we hunt at midnight. That's a long day, Diana said. They filled it. Horizon's cyber team built a honeypot server that looked like candy to a thief. They salted it with false keys, scattered breadcrumbs that led to nothing, and everything stitched tripwires into scripts that would sing when touched. Priya and Armon refitted housings with Ethan's slat vents and dog bone grommets, their hands moving like apology and promise at once. Maya watched from her desk, headphones on, scribbling notes about hinges, about respect between parts, about giving weight somewhere to go when it asked. Every so often she glanced up, found Ethan took comfort, dove back in. At dusk, the anonymous caller returned. The number blocked. The voice disguised thinner, now afraid. Pier 47. The voice whispered, confirming Kane's map. South Tower, I can't keep this. He'll eat me. I have transfers, messages, internal memos. He ordered the breach. He wants to break her in public. Who is this? Ethan asked. A long inhale like someone learning how to be brave. Theo, the voice said, E.T. at Virex. I shouldn't, the line cut. Diana spoke into the silence. We go heavy. Boats, perimeter, drone overhead. Ethan shook his head. No uniforms. He said it. Sloane eats uniforms. We go quiet and we make sure our loud is 5 seconds away. Adriana's eyes found him. You're leading. I'll walk in, he said. You'll be 10 meters back in shadow. Diana will own the air. You're not going alone, Adriana said automatically. He didn't fight her. I don't intend to. Before they left, there was the ritual of small homes, lights, flipped a check of windows that couldn't open a last glance at a photo. Ethan tucked Sarah's picture into his inner pocket. He found Maya's door, cracked soft lamplight spilling like mercy. She was awake on purpose. She held something small wrapped in tissue. For you. He sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress shifting toward him, the past shifting with it. She placed the bundle in his palm. Inside lay a thin balsa rib from her wing model, sanded smooth, sealed with a clear coat that made it stronger than it looked. On one side, pencil lines measured perfect and tiny. On the other, in her careful print, "Come back." He swallowed. "I will." "You always say that," she said, and her mouth tried for a brave smile and didn't quite get there. "Say it again." "I will." He leaned down, kissed her hair, breathed sugar and wood glue and the ghost of apple. "You're my hinge," he whispered. Polite and strong. She laughed watery. "Gross." He stood, turned at the door. "Build something that annoys gravity while I'm gone." "I already did," she said, holding up the missing rib. "It's you." Fog crawled low along the Embarcadero, softening streetlights into gold coins pressed against the dark. The ferry building clock smudged midnight with its own foggy breath. Pier 47 crouched like a rusted spine gulls hunched on rails, the bay black and heavy. Diana's team melted into shadow. A drone hung high, a single eye dimmed to a lazy star. A van idled 2 blocks away with people inside who would arrive before a scream could finish being born. Ethan walked with his hands, empty palms visible. He wore a jacket that carried no insignia, boots that remembered other nights. Adriana kept pace at his 10 o'clock, far enough to vanish if you didn't know where to look. He knew. A figure stepped out beneath the south tower. Young. Hoodie pulled up. A backpack slung across one shoulder like his life depended on the strap not failing. "Theo," Ethan called softly. The figure flinched, then nodded. Pale with eyes that hadn't slept, hands shaking in the light you could borrow from a city when the moon left you. "I can't." Theo's voice cracked. He thrust the backpack out like it had grown hot. "I copied the cue. The memos, the payments to the shell. I left the rest. If he sees—" From the north end of the pier, a thud. Not loud. Effective. The sound of a decision arriving. Theo's eyes went wide. He followed me. The air shifted. 3 shapes peeled from shadow, deliberate the way violence learned to walk upright. Kane was not among them. This crew moved cleaner. Corporate wolves hired to wear janitor uniforms by day and hunt by night. Back, Ethan said, already moving. Diana. The street and then the water woke up. Diana's people bloomed from the dark with speed and precision. Quiet weapons snapped to shoulder-red dots, kissing wood, a half-inch to the left of everyone's heart. The drone brightened enough to startle, not enough to blind. One of the shapes raised a hand, palm open. "We're not here to kill, we're here to talk." Ethan laughed once. "You brought the wrong hands for talking." "Tick-tock, Mr. Cole." "Mr. Cole," the man said, eyes flicking past Ethan to the woman 10 meters behind him, whose cardigan did nothing to hide the fact that the room always bent toward her. 9 a.m. Your board meets. The truth comes out with or without you. Behind Ethan. Theo shoved the backpack harder into his chest. "Take it, please." Ethan did. He slid it toward Adriana without looking, trusting her to catch the seam. She did. "You're leaking her medical file," Ethan said to the man, not asking, naming it. The man's mouth twitched, a confession that knew it didn't matter. "We prefer the term story correction. Markets hate surprises. They also hate indictments," Diana said from the dark voice, calm as a winter road. The man shrugged, like weather was weather. 9 a.m. Consider this courtesy. He stepped back, slow hands never lowering. His 2 shadows mirrored him, retreating into the fog like figures painted with water. They had come to be seen to draw the borders of the field. Not to bleed, not tonight. "Stand down," Diana murmured. The drone dimmed, the dots winked out, the night took back its breath. Ethan turned to Theo. "You're coming with us." Theo shook his head violently. If I disappear, he breaks my sister. Then we make you visible, Adriana said, stepping forward into the light at last. Her voice was the softest thing on the pier and the hardest. You're a whistleblower now. We don't hide you. We wrap you in law and daylight. Theo stared. Recognition hit after a heartbeat, the face from articles and keynote stages, now only a woman with a sling and eyes that didn't look away. He nodded once, a decision falling into place like a well-made joint. They moved as a unit back toward the street fog, curling around their ankles like a living thing. At the curb, Ethan paused. The bay sounded like breath. The clock said midnight and some. You okay? He asked Adriana, not menacing, simply checking the hinge. I will be, she said, after we decide whether to let a wolf tell my story or whether I do it myself. Back at the tower, Theo's files sprawled across a conference table transfers memos, an internal thread that said out loud what careful men rarely write. Discredit Vega OneNote clipped. Accelerate disclosure. Another Cole's proximity creates leverage. Ethan sat very still as he read that one. Then he folded the corner of the paper like a man marking a page he would revisit with a different kind of time. Dawn threatened behind the fog. The city yawned. 9 a.m. gathered itself a floor below their feet. Adriana stood at the window, face reflected over the bay. Her right hand started a small, stubborn tremor. She stared at it. She did not hide it. I have spent my life controlling the variables, she said. But control is a consolation prize disguised as a crown. Ethan came to stand beside her, both of them ghosts on the glass. Truth is heavier than rumor, but it holds. The board will revolt, she said. Maybe. The stock will lurch, probably. And Maya, she stopped. The name held more weight than any ticker symbol. She'll see the kind of brave that isn't about walking into fire, Ethan said. She'll see the kind that stands in daylight. The room stilled around them. Phones slept on their faces. Theo dozed in a chair like a kid at the end of a double shift. Diana watched the door and the windows and the air in between. Adriana drew a breath that started in the soles of her feet. All hands, she said. 8:45. Before the board. Before the leak. We tell the story. We own the verbs. Ethan nodded. I'll stand in the back. Stand where she can see you, Adriana said. She's my hinge too. At 8:44 her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A single line. Tick. At 8:45 another talk. She silenced the screen. She walked to the elevator. Ethan fell in beside her. The doors slid shut with a whisper like an oath. When they opened, the floor was full. Engineers, assistants, lawyers, janitors, security. Even the robots downstairs seemed to pause their long, patient dance. Adriana stepped up onto the low platform by reception. No lights, no teleprompter. Just her voice, and the city pressing its face against the glass to listen. She glanced once to the back of the room where a 12-year-old girl stood between a neighbor who loved her and a man trying to become the version of himself they both deserved. Adriana lifted the mic. Her right hand trembled. She didn't hide it. Good morning, she said. And then she chose daylight. The silence after Adriana's opening words was so complete that even the hum of servers on the floor below seemed to vanish. Hundreds of eyes locked on her, some filled with worry, some with loyalty, others with the wary curiosity of people who knew their world might shift in the next heartbeat. She stood there, cardigan soft over her shoulders, hair loose, right hand trembling just enough to catch the light. For years she had hidden that tremor, clenching it into a fist under boardroom tables, tucking it into pockets, masking it with the smooth glide of technology. Not today. I want to tell you a story, she said, her voice carrying more strength than anyone expected. My story. From the back of the crowd, Ethan felt Maya's small hand slip into his. He squeezed once, grounding them both. Adriana continued. 3 years ago, in a clinic room that smelled of antiseptic and fear, a neurologist told me that I had early-onset Parkinson's disease. I was 36. I was at the height of my career. And in a single sentence, I was reduced in my own mind to a prognosis. Murmurs rippled. The word Parkinson seemed to hang in the air like a fragile glass object threatening to shatter. I spent weeks pretending it wasn't true, she went on steady. I buried myself in work. I doubled my hours. I pushed my engineers harder. And then late one night, when I couldn't button my own blouse without effort, I realized denial was a luxury I couldn't afford. I needed to build something not just for myself, but for every person who has ever been told their body will betray them. Her eyes swept across the room. That is how Project Helios began. Not as a marketing strategy, not as a stock gamble, as a lifeline. For me, for you, for millions. Someone sniffled in the front row. Another raised a phone instinctively, then lowered it as if ashamed to intrude. Last month, my private medical information was stolen, Adriana said, voice tightening. Leak twisted, used to cast doubt on our work. You deserve to hear it from me, not from a rival trying to profit off my fear. The tremor in her hand worsened slightly. She lifted it, held it out where everyone could see. This is me, unhidden, unmasked, still here, still fighting, and I will not apologize for the truth of my body. The room erupted not with polite claps, but with the kind of applause that rises from relief from solidarity. Some employees stood, others cried openly. The sound reverberated against glass walls, filling even the silent corners. Ethan felt Maya squeeze his hand harder, her eyes wet but fierce. She's brave, Maya whispered. Yes, Ethan murmured back, the bravest kind. When the applause ebbed, Adriana raised her voice once more. Now let's talk about what this means. It means our company was attacked. It means someone believes weakness can be turned into a weapon. But it also means that we together will decide what story gets written. We will define Helios by what it gives to the world, not by what fear tries to take. Her gaze caught Ethan's for just a second across the crowd. He nodded silent affirmation. By the time she finished, the room was buzzing no longer with fear, but with a strange electricity. Anger turned to purpose. Vulnerability turned to loyalty. The meeting broke apart slowly. Groups forming in hushed circles, people talking fast, hands moving with conviction. The tremor in the building wasn't panic anymore. It was momentum. Upstairs in a smaller room with blinds half closed against the fog, the board of directors assembled. Men with polished shoes and cautious eyes, women with folders thick with projections. A few already holding their phones under the table, fielding investor texts. Adriana entered with Diana at her shoulder. Ethan a step behind Maya, left upstairs with Mrs. Rodriguez, who had flown in on the first morning flight to help. Martin Geller, the chairman, cleared his throat. Adriana, we've seen the headlines. We've heard rumors. I trust you have an explanation? She looked each of them in the eye, then gave the same speech she had given the staff without softening, without hiding. When she finished, silence again. But this silence was different, heavier, calculating. Finally, one board member exhaled. You realize the market may punish us for this? Yes, Adriana said. But the market also rewards courage and transparency. Investors may waver. But customers' patience will see this for what it is, a promise that our technology is born from lived need, not just profit. Another leaned forward, lips pursed. And Victor Mercer. He will not hesitate to exploit this. Ethan's voice cut in, surprising even himself. He already did. He tried to sabotage her plane. He planted moles. He risked a child's life to get his hands on Helios. That's who you're choosing, between her truth or his deceit. Eyes swung toward him. A mechanic, a soldier, a single father, standing in a room of suits. His words dropped like tools on marble. Martin adjusted his glasses, studying Ethan with a mixture of annoyance and curiosity. Then he turned back to Adriana. You've thrown the dice. No, Adriana said, calm but firm. I've placed my faith where it belongs, in people who deserve it. The meeting dragged for hours, legal questions circling PR contingencies debated. When they finally adjourned, it was nearly noon. Outside, the sun broke through the fog for the first time in days, a thin beam slashing across the bay. Ethan and Adriana walked together down the quiet hallway. Neither spoke until they reached the glass doors of her office. You didn't have to defend me back there, she said softly. Yes, I did, he answered. Because you're not just fighting for yourself anymore. You're fighting for everyone, including Maya. Her breath caught. She looked at him, then really looked, as if seeing the man behind the grease-stained coveralls, behind the years of exhaustion. Ethan, she began, but her phone buzzed violently, interrupting. She checked the screen. A single message. No name. Just 3 words. We're not done. The blood drained from her face. Ethan's jaw clenched. Mercer. No, she whispered, eyes narrowing. This feels different, more direct. They stood in the doorway, two shadows cast long on the polished floor, knowing the storm hadn't broken yet, only shifted its weight. And somewhere beyond the glass and the light, another hand reached for the wheel of their story. The message sat on Adriana's phone like a shard of glass. 3 words black on white. We're not done. She showed it to Ethan. His eyes didn't move from the screen for a long beat, then flicked up to her face. This isn't Mercer's style, he said. He sends noise. This is clean, personal. Adriana nodded once, jaw tight. It could be anyone who had access to those files. Kane's contacts. A board leak. Or... She trailed off, unwilling to say the last thought. Or someone closer, Ethan finished for her. The office felt suddenly smaller, its glass walls fragile as sugar. Outside, the city pulsed with indifferent life. Inside, truth and suspicion stalked the floor like predators that refused to be named. Diana entered quietly, holding a folder. We traced the origin of that text. Burn phone. Bought yesterday. Dumped this morning. Whoever sent it doesn't want a trail. She laid the folder on Adriana's desk. Inside were stills from security footage. Shadows at Pier 47, one figure half hidden. Theo's testimony helped us identify a secondary player. Goes by Rook, ex-military. Contracted often through cutouts. He was there. Ethan studied the grainy image. A man's frame, broad, careful in movement. Rook doesn't bluff, he muttered. If he's in play, this isn't just Mercer. There's another layer. Adriana pressed her fingers to her temple. We're fighting a shadow with more shadows. Yes, Diana agreed. Which means we bring it into daylight. We set bait. Ethan looked at Adriana. You've already given them daylight. Your condition, your truth, it's out. Now they'll strike harder. If they can't own the story, they'll try to break the woman telling it. Her gaze didn't waver. Then we make sure when they strike, they break themselves. That evening, the tower transformed again. Not into a gala this time, not into a boardroom battleground, into a fortress disguised as an office. Tech teams built a false prototype server loaded with glittering code designed to look like the crown jewels of Helios. Security rotated in quiet triangles through halls, radios, low eyes sharper than ever. Maya watched from a corner perched on a rolling chair, notebook open. You're making a decoy, she said, pencil moving fast. Like in chess when you sacrifice a pawn to draw out the queen. Ethan smiled faintly despite the tension. Exactly. Maya chewed her pencil. But pawns sometimes get forgotten. Don't let them forget the real piece. Adriana crouched beside her sling, neat eyes softening. We won't, she promised. Your dad and I won't let that happen. Maya studied her face as if weighing the truth of those words. Then she nodded, satisfied. Night fell. From the roof, the city looked like a scatter of constellations pressed flat against black glass. The bay glimmered faint fog threading low. Ethan and Diana stood in the chill wind scanning the streets below. Feels too quiet, Ethan murmured. It always does before something breaks, Diana replied. Her earpiece crackled. A voice from the surveillance team. Movement at the East Service entrance. 3 individuals, disguised as maintenance. They're carrying cases. Ethan's heart kicked. It's them. Inside, alarms stayed silent by design. Cameras tracked the intruders as they slipped down corridors painted in false quiet. They moved straight for the decoy server room, bypassing real security nodes as if they'd studied the building's bones. They know the blueprint, Diana said, eyes narrowing. Adriana's voice came through comms. Then they'll find what we want them to. The intruders entered the server chamber, their cases opened. Not tools, not guns, devices meant to siphon terabytes in minutes. And then one of them pulled back his hood. Ethan froze. Rook. A scar running down his jaw, eyes too calm. A man Ethan had once trained beside in dust and fire. A man who'd chosen contracts over conscience. Ethan's chest burned. It's him. Who Diana asked, Rook, Ethan said flatly. And if he's here, it means someone's paying more than Mercer ever could. Down below, the hack began. Lights flickered blue across the racks. The bait glittered ready. But Rook didn't plug in immediately. He looked straight into the nearest camera. straight at Ethan watching, and he smiled. Message, Diana muttered. Ethan's fists curled. He wants me down there. Adriana's voice cut in. No. That's exactly what he wants. Then let me want it too, Ethan snapped, for a beat silence on the line. Then Adriana softer. If you go, you don't go alone. Minutes later, Ethan and Diana entered the service corridor. Boots, silent weapons ready, but low. The hum of servers filled the air, an electronic heartbeat. Inside the chamber, Rook waited, flanked by two masked operatives. Data streams crawled across their devices. Cole Rook said voice even like they were back in barracks. You always did know how to follow a trail. You always did know how to betray one, Ethan shot back. Rook's smile sharpened. Not betrayal. Economics. Loyalty doesn't pay rent. Loyalty keeps kids alive, Ethan said, heat in his throat. That's the difference between us. Rook's eyes glinted. Speaking of kids, she's brilliant. Maya. Wings and hinges. Do you know how easy it is to find school projects online? Ethan moved before thought gun rising. Diana caught his arm just enough to keep the barrel steady. Rook laughed quietly. Touchy. Relax. No harm. Yet. Behind him, the masked operatives continued their siphon. Only they weren't getting the data they thought. Horizon's honeypot code was feeding them ghosts embedding trackers marking every system they touched. Adriana's whisper filled Ethan's ear. Hold him a little longer, the net is almost closed. Ethan stared at Rook. You came all this way for lies. Rook tilted his head. Maybe. But sometimes lies tell me where the truth sleeps. Alarm suddenly flared. Not in the building, but on Rook's devices. His eyes narrowed. You think you caught me? We did, Diana said coldly, stepping forward. Rook moved faster than expected, slamming his case shut, pulling a smoke canister from his belt. The chamber exploded with white haze, choking, blinding. Chaos, shouts, the crack of scuffles. Ethan lunged through the fog, tackling Rook hard against the rack. They hit metal with a clang. Rook swung fists, grazing Ethan's jaw. Ethan struck back, old training flaring alive, each blow a memory. You don't walk away this time, Ethan growled, but Rook's laugh echoed through the smoke. We're not done. He yanked a pin. Another canister hissed this time, not smoke, but flash. Light seared, sound cracked. Ethan's vision shattered into stars. By the time it cleared, the chamber was empty, devices gone. Rook and his men vanished into service tunnels that bled into the city. Diana cursed into comms. Lost them. Adriana's voice came calm but tight. Check the feed. Did the trackers seed tech's voice urgent? Yes. Their devices are pinging. We know where they're headed. Ethan wiped blood from his lip, chest heaving. Where downtown tech answered. An abandoned high-rise scheduled for demolition, 15 blocks away. Rook had left his message, his smile, his taunt. We're not done. Ethan's jaw set like stone. Then neither are we. He looked toward the tower's glass where he knew Adriana stood watching. Their eyes met across wires and smoke across fear and resolve. This wasn't just a fight for technology anymore. It was a fight for family, for truth, for the right to keep moving forward when the world wanted to shove them back. And Ethan Cole was ready to carry it to the end. The night air outside the Horizon Tower was cold sharp with salt from the bay. Ethan leaned against the black SUV as Diana issued orders into her comms. Red and blue strobes washed faintly from patrol cars. At a distance, curious city cops rerouted to power surges never told the full story. But Ethan's mind wasn't on the streets. It was on Maya upstairs in the penthouse with Mrs. Rodriguez safe for now, but only because Rook had chosen to leave her name dangling like bait. Adriana approached her cardigan, traded for a fitted jacket, her face pale but steady. They're in the high-rise. We have them pinned. The trackers confirm it. Abandoned building scheduled for demolition, Diana added. It's layered with steel. If we wait too long, signals could go dead. We move now. Ethan's fists clenched. His knuckles still ached from their clash in the server room. Then let's move. Adriana touched his arm, a quick press. Ethan, don't let this be just about anger. He'll try to use that. He met her eyes. This isn't anger. This is survival. The convoy rolled quiet through darkened streets. No sirens, just engines humming low. The city's neon faded the deeper they drove into the district, where forgotten buildings leaned like weary giants. The high-rise loomed ahead, 30 stories of concrete skeleton windows, smashed graffiti, scrawled like scars. Its top floors were eaten by fog. Diana scanned through binoculars. Heat signatures 3rd and 4th floors, 5, maybe 6 bodies. Rook among them. Entrance, Ethan asked. North side stairwell. Cameras show no rigging. Yet Diana said, Ethan checked his gear, just a sidearm and a tactical flashlight. He wasn't Horizon's employee. He wasn't police. He was a father with a soldier's past. That was enough. Adriana reached for him before he followed the others. Her voice dropped low only for him. Bring him back alive if you can. We need answers. We need proof against Mercer. Ethan studied her face, the tremor in her hand, the raw hope behind her command. He nodded once. Alive. If I can. The stairwell smelled of mildew and rust. Every footstep echoed up into darkness. The team moved in disciplined silence, Diana leading Ethan a step behind. His pulse thudded steady, controlled. On the 3rd floor landing, Diana held up a fist. The hallway stretched ahead, concrete ribs doors gaping. And in the center, waiting Rook. He stood unarmed, arms loose at his sides, as if welcoming them. Took you long enough? He called. His voice bounced off walls. Hands where I can see them, Diana ordered. Rook obeyed lazily, palms out. His smile was cruel, still the lapdog Diana. And Cole. His eyes slid to Ethan. Still running errands for people who'd never bleed for you. Ethan stepped forward, gun steady. Drop whatever game you're playing. Rook's grin widened. Game? Oh, Cole. I already won. While you chased ghosts, the real prize walked out. Ethan's gut went cold. What do you mean Mercer's not in this city anymore? He's flying east with data I hand-delivered. Diana stiffened. You're lying. Rook shrugged. Check your feeds. Signal stopped 10 minutes ago. He's airborne. Tech confirmation crackled faintly in Diana's ear. Ethan read it in her eyes, truth bitter and undeniable. Ethan's rage surged hot. He lunged, shoving Rook against the wall, forearm across his throat. Where is he headed? Rook just laughed, even as pressure cut his breath. You can't protect them forever. Not Chen, not your kid. You'll tire. We won't. Ethan's teeth clenched. Images flashed. Maya bent over her wing model, whispering questions in the night. Sarah's photograph on his nightstand. Adriana's trembling hand held out for the world to see. You'll never touch them, Ethan growled. Diana's voice cut sharp. Cole. Enough. He forced himself back, chest heaving. Rook coughed, straightened, grinning blood through his teeth. There he is, the man who always carries too much weight. Diana's team cuffed him, dragging him toward the stairwell. But as they passed, Rook leaned close to Ethan, whispering words meant for no one else. She's more like you than you think. Chen. She hides her fear same way you do. That's why I admire her, but admiration won't save her. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Hours later, dawn was clawing pale lines over the bay. Ethan stood on Adriana's balcony, the city below waking. She joined him quietly, cradling a mug of tea in her good hand. They're transferring Rook to federal custody, she said. But if Mercer is airborne, she trailed off. Ethan exhaled long, heavy. Then this isn't the end. It's the beginning. Adriana looked at him, eyes raw from a night without rest. You've risked too much already. He shook his head. No, I haven't risked enough. He turned to her steady. If Mercer thinks he can use fear, if he thinks he can dangle threats against Maya, against you, then I'm not backing down. I'll follow this wherever it goes. The city light caught on her features, softening steel into something almost vulnerable. And if that means losing everything you have left, Ethan's voice was rough but sure. Then I'll rebuild, but not if I stay silent. Adriana studied him long silent. Then she set her mug down and placed her trembling hand over his. Then we fight together. Behind them, Maya stirred awake, rubbing her eyes, stepping onto the balcony with her science notebook still clutched like armor. She looked from her father to Adriana, then out at the city. "What happens now?" she asked. Ethan Bent kissed her hair. "Now, we get ready for the next storm." The sun rose painting gold over glass, but the shadow of Mercer's plane stretched long across the horizon, proof that the storm was already on its way. Morning arrived the way truth does, slow, at first then everywhere. A pale wash over the bay. A light that didn't ask permission. Horizon Tower hummed like a living thing. Keycards chirped. Elevators breathed. Doors side closed and sealed their secrets. On the 28th floor, the war room glowed with screens, arcs of code maps of the city, a blinking trail that leapt across a continent like a skipped heartbeat. The trackers seated during the breach, Priya said, hair in a messy knot, fingers flying. They're chirping from a cluster in Midtown, leased shell office, third subfloor. Ping rebroadcast through 2 satellite uplinks, then into a private cloud stamped under Mercer Holdings. Diana didn't look away from the feed. "We already sent this to Federal. Marshals are staging. New York cybercrime is drooling." Adriana stood at the table's edge, not touching anything, owning everything. Her right hand trembled. She set her left over it. The tremor kept going because that's what bodies do. She let it. Ethan watched the pulsing dots, a red vein threading glass and sky. "He's there. He thinks he won. He thinks the data is clean," Priya murmured. "But our honeypot baked receipts into every packet. When he compiles, he'll sign his own name." "Show me," Ethan said. On the center screen, a flow diagram, blossomed arrows, callouts, the architecture of a theft that looked like a nervous system. At its heart, a tiny watermark, nothing you'd notice unless you were looking. A line of numbers that, when decrypted, spelled a time, a place, an IP, a chain of custody poem. Beautiful. Ethan breathed, surprised by the word in his mouth. Ugly and beautiful. Adriana's gaze slid to him, then back to the maps. "Let's make it useful." 2,000 miles away, rain struck a Manhattan sidewalk like typewriter keys. Federal jackets split the lobby of a bland tower. Elevators froze on command. Badge readers blinked, betrayed by a warrant. Doors opened into rooms where men who thought they were smarter than the law remembered what hands feel like when they're guided behind your back. A subfloor server room tried to pretend it wasn't a heart. Fans whirred. Lights blinked in tiny breaths. A console halfway through a compile coughed up a name it wasn't supposed to speak in daylight: V. Mercer. In San Francisco, the room listened in on a secured feed. Priya grinned. "Got him." Diana didn't grin. "Hold him." Phones across 3 time zones began to ring in unison. Boardrooms, law offices, airports, the sound of a man's life becoming paperwork. But Mercer, in a sleek glass office with a view of a wet city that had never loved anyone for long, smiled into a camera and said he'd see them in court. That innovation required competition. That Adriana Vega had always been fragile. That Horizon's house was glass and the stones were on sale. He didn't mention the hospital bracelets he'd collect like trophies. He didn't mention the plane crash. He didn't mention the part where he'd risked the mind of a child. He never would. Men like him call those things market pressure. Ethan stared at the screen, jaw tight. "He'll wriggle." Maybe Adriana said, "But he won't wriggle free of all of it." Theo Pale, wrung out brave, sat on a rolling chair clutching a paper cup. He raised a shaking hand. "He paid a Horizon insider," he said. "There were memos. Not obvious. Vague language like facilitate staging and accelerate disclosure schedule. But there were names. I think," he swallowed, "I think one of your board." The room shifted. Air changed shape. Diana slid a folder across the table. "We pulled 6 months of outgoing comms from your directors, triangulated with Theo's dumps. One account stands out. Not Martin. He's annoying, not suicidal. It's..." She flipped the page. "Alma Cross." A hush. Alma polished precise the board's fiscal hawk with a smile like a blade you didn't see until the light caught it. Alma, who'd argued for practical partnerships, who'd said the right words while cutting the wrong wires. Adriana closed her eyes for 1 second. In that second, you could hear a door closing in her head. Then she opened them. "Don't call her," she said. "Call the U.S. attorney." At noon, Adriana faced cameras. Not lights and velvet ropes, Not a rotunda and champagne, a press room with scuffed baseboards and foam coffee. The place where truth wears flats. Ethan stood off to the side. Maya sat between Mrs. Rodriguez and Priya, a pencil tucked behind one ear, taking notes fiercely, like she could rewrite reality if she threw enough lead at it. Adriana spoke. She didn't perform. She didn't rise and swell. She used plain words like tools. Horizon was attacked, she said. By a rival. By contractors. By someone inside this company who will never again sit on our board. We will pursue every legal avenue. We will do that work quietly, thoroughly, without spectacle. She took a breath that stuttered once, kept going. I also want to say this, my diagnosis does not define our technology. It animates it. Helios was born in a clinic and built in a lab and tested in the real world. It exists for people who have been told no by their own bodies. A reporter called out sharp. Stock fell 9% this morning. Are you worried, Ms. Vega? Yes, Adriana said to a collective blink. I'm worried about a boy named Jaime who uses our software to answer questions in class. I'm worried about a dancer who can't dance. I'm worried about a truck driver who can't grip a typist whose fingers won't map to thought. If the stock falls because we built Helios to serve them first, then the stock can catch up. Will Helios be affordable? Another asked. Or will it be a luxury? A pause. A pivot. A decision arriving in her own mouth. Helios will have a base tier that is free for qualified patients, she said, voice steady. Hardware at cost. Software for zero. We'll fund it with grants and with profits from enterprise integrations. We will not gatekeep independence. PR flinched and smiled at the same time. Legal looked like prayer. The internet seconds later caught fire with the kind that heats, not burns. Back upstairs as the building exhaled, the U.S. attorney called. Alma Cross was in custody. Emails, transfers, a meeting with Mercer's second at a wine bar with bad lighting but great cameras. Facilitate staging, the memo said. Accelerate disclosure schedule, the memo said. Everyone loves a euphemism until it testifies. Adriana took the call without victory in her voice. When she hung up, she didn't dance. She didn't cry. She sat. She let her head find her hands. Ethan dropped into the chair beside her. Breathe, he said. She did. A long inhale. A longer exhale. Then she looked at him. You could walk away now, back to your farmhouse, back to quiet. No one would judge you. He shook his head. I had quiet. Quiet is where the bills echo and the roof drips, and you promise your kid they're safe and pray you're not lying. Quiet didn't fix anything. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the temporary badge she'd handed him days ago, the letters already smudged by his thumb. If the offer still stands, I'll make it official. A small, tired smile. Interim my ass, she said. Welcome to the mess. He laughed low in surprise because he hadn't realized how much he'd needed to hear someone say, stay. Maya knocked on the doorframe, hovering. Did we just become poor? She asked gravely. Because free software sounds expensive. Adriana barked a laugh that cracked and then healed in the same second. We're going to be fine, she said. Because your dad's about to make sure my devices don't break, and that's worth a lot. Maya considered. Okay. But also, can we still get dumplings? Definitely dumplings, Ethan said. Essential infrastructure. Months shook themselves into place. Mercer was indicted, then arraigned, then louder than he'd ever been, until he wasn't. His empire learned that money is a tide, and tides retreat. Alma pled to a lesser charge in exchange for turning every pocket inside out. She cried at sentencing. No one clapped. Horizon didn't become an angel. Companies can't. They're machines that run on people, and people are complicated. But policy changed. The program for free Helios rolled out. Clinics signed on. A waiting room in Fresno cheered when a teenager used their eyes to type hi at a nurse who had known them forever and only then realized how much they'd been missing. Adriana started treatment protocols she'd resisted. Some days the tremor quieted. Some days it yelled. She learned to let both be true. She learned to ask for help out loud. She learned it looked like strength. Ethan grew into a glass office like a pair of broken-in boots. He didn't use the desk much. He was downstairs more often, sleeves rolled shoulder to shoulder with engineers finding seams no one thought to check. The practical applications team became an artery blood between theory and the world. At home, the executive residence that still felt like a hotel until it didn't. Maya's desk filled with plans and wires and paper wings. She argued with gravity so much the sky started sending flowers. She mentored 2 kids through the Young Innovators program, then 3, then 5, because word gets around when someone your age looks you in the eye and says, "You can." One evening, almost a year after the night, the sky fell in a field. They flew back to the farmhouse. The porch had been fixed. The roof no longer wept in the first rain. The corn rose high, patient green as if it had never known fire. Mrs. Alvarez had strung cafe lights along the fence. They hummed like happy bees. A long table waited under them, paella, steaming bowls of cut fruit, a pie that might have been a miracle or just sugar and love measured correctly. Neighbors came. The sheriff who'd believed first. Rosa from the diner with a hug that cracked ribs kindly. Diana showed up in a linen shirt looking like someone who was learning to be off duty. She denied it twice, then accepted a plate. Priya brought a tin of cookies a little too perfect to have been made in a home kitchen. Theo drove up from downstate. He got out of his car like forgiveness. Adriana stood at the edge of the field and touched the scar in the earth where metal had once bitten. Her right hand trembled. She let it rest on the soil. The tremor passed into dirt. Dirt knows about weather. It takes it all and grows anyway. Ethan stepped beside her, hands in pockets, head tipped to a sky that had decided to behave itself for once. "I kept meaning to plant something here," he said. "A marker. Not a gravestone. A promise." Maya jogged over with a sapling so small it looked like hope pretending to be a tree. "Oak," she said, importantly. "Because we live in a storm zone." They dug. They laughed because the shovel hit a rock that had the audacity to be exactly where a shovel wanted to go. They used their hands, soil got under nails and didn't apologize. They set the sapling. They pressed earth like a benediction. When they finished, Maya wiped her forehead and stepped back. The little tree trembled in the evening breeze. It looked fragile. It looked stubborn. It looked like something that fully intended to outlive all of them. Mrs. Alvarez clapped once. "Now we eat." They ate. They told the story and then they told it again. They edited it for the children and sharpened it for the adults. They raised glasses of lemonade and cheap wine and the good whiskey someone always brings to a table in a house that has survived. Later, when the string lights hummed and the bugs sang and the world had the audacity to be gentle, Ethan carried a box onto the porch. The recipe book with his grandmother's handwriting. The county fair photo, a framed print of Maya holding her science ribbon, grinning so hard the frame nearly couldn't contain it. He set them on the mantle, old next to new past, beside future, not a replacement, a chorus. Adriana found him there. The house smelled like cinnamon and motor oil and night. She looked at the photos at the oak through the window at him. "We never finished a conversation," she said. "Which one?" he asked, smiling because there were so many. "The one about second chances," she said. "You told me once you didn't believe in them." He shrugged. "I didn't." Then the sky fell. Then a girl made a hinge that held. She stepped closer. Her hand reached for his tremor and all. He took it. The shake met his steadiness and both changed shape. "You saved me," she said. "You saved us," he replied. They stood there without the need to name it, because some things don't require a label to be true. Out in the yard, the oak moved a little, learned the wind, practiced staying. Inside, Maya's voice drifted from the kitchen, bossing Priya out of her way with affection. "No, no, you mix after, you know what, give me the whisk." Laughter answered. The night leaned in. The porch boards remembered every footstep. The horizon drew a clean line between dark and dawn and said softly, "Go on then." They would. There would be more storms, there would be more mornings, and each time the sky tried to fall, there would be hands to catch, and a hinge to hold, and a small tree insisting growth is a kind of courage. Ethan squeezed Adriana's fingers. She squeezed back. The house breathed, the field waited. The story didn't end. It opened. Your thoughts will help us create meaningful stories. And if you want to hear more powerful healing stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Click the bell icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And most importantly, share this video with people who need a little hope today. Thank you so much for your time. We hear you, we listen to you, and we are honored to tell these stories for you.